You better be listening to Sleazoids or I must break you.
The story of a guy.
Warning, I'm here.
And his wife.
James Bond style.
Together for the first time in their first big movie.
I meant to do that.
I say we chill it. Yeah! Adam and Barbara are ghosts.
What's the good of being a ghost if you can't frighten people away?
Their house is being haunted by the living.
Maybe the house could use a little remodeling.
And they can't scare them into leaving.
They're dead. It's a little late to be neurotic.
So they're calling on Beetlejuice.
Beetlejuice!
Who's no ordinary ghost.
You don't want his help.
Can you be scary? What do you think of this?
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Sleazoids, the podcast where we go down the rabbit hole of 20th century genre fare from the most influential canon classics to the trashiest exploitation films we can get our hands on, and invite you to tag along in helping us create a canon of sleaze. Each week is a double feature Grindhouse style where we discuss two films loosely related by subject, genre, actor, filmmaker, or franchise, and at the end of each episode, along with our honorary Sleazoids, which you can become by subscribing on Patreon.
Next week, we are talking about an unbelievably talented actress that I imagine Josh as well, am madly in love with. So join that sleaze.
Very true, very true. We decide on all the official ratings and rankings for every film that we cover as well. Patreon subscribers also get an on-air shout-out and 2 bonus episodes every single month, which we are coming up on, I think, 7 years of bonus episodes. There's like 170, I think, now, plus bonus episodes, as well as our bonus transmission series, where we talk about new release genre films, which there's like over 50 of. So, again, it's like 200, what's math? 220-ish bonus episodes for anyone who makes the jump, and that's patreon.com/Sleazoids podcast for anyone who's interested. And speaking of which, we had a bunch of people make the jump this week, so we're going to give them their shout outs here. We had Helena sign up at $5 a month. We had Michael David sign up. We had Jake Dewitt Hoger. We had Knack Iron Tarkus. We had Nick Glazier sign up for an entire year of the show at the annual tier, because you get a little bit of a discounted monthly rate for doing that for anyone who's interested. We had Wine Mom sign up, DNM Fee, Jeremy, who signed up at the annual tier, Indiana, which you would think is spelled like Indiana Jones, but it's more like indie film Anna. Interesting. Okay. We had McDude Guy sign up. We had James McNamara, Hernan Perez McKay, Uberland Gizbar, Samantha Moorfield, Alexander Arnotts, Randall James Colburn, Benjamin C. Lucas, Cars, Fightin' Fetus, who signed up for an entire year of the show. We got a year of Fightin' Fetus, folks. We got Jack sign up, Tyler, James Goodrow, the Laser Wolf, Chaz, and Austin Williams. We had a very fun collection of people signing up. I hope you guys are enjoying all those bonus episodes. We appreciate the support. Thank you.
Yeah, I want to see Fighting Fetus and Laser Wolf fight it out. Battle it out in the cage.
Let us know if you guys will do that. Comment below. That's the one plug for the week. All right. No, wait, hold on. Is that the one plug for the week? What's the other? There's all kinds of plugs for the week.
Yeah, we got merch too.
Yeah, that's right. There's merch. I don't know. We're a bit loosey-goosey this week. If you like the poster art that based out of Toronto horror artist Trevor Henderson did for our show, you can get that put on basically anything that you guys can think of. You guys have bought coffee mugs, hoodies, pillows, notebooks. The link to that is in the description, as well as over at sleazoidspodcast.com. And you know what? I already remembered what my other thing was. It was Apple Podcasts and Spotify. If you guys are listening on either one of those platforms, we did a nice little reversal here. Give us a good old rating and review over there. It helps us climb the ranks and find new listeners. And I can see all of you listening over there. You guys think that I'm joking when I say this now, because I say it every week, but I actually can see who's listening over there. So like I can tell that you're not reviewing. So go do it.
We're monitoring every one of you.
That's right. But yeah, that is it for the intro. Welcome back to another week. As always, I am your host, Josh Lewis, and joining me also, as always, is my co-host,
Jamie Miller. Welcome back, everybody.
Welcome. I believe 2 weeks ago would have been the last time you folks over here on the main feed would have heard from us, where we would have had special guest film programmer Brandon Lim of the Black Belt Cinema screening series here in Toronto on to discuss the late son of martial arts screen legend Bruce Lee, Brandon Lee, with a double feature of his attempt to bring some Hong Kong action choreography into the sort of like American cop thriller genre with Dwight H. Little's Rapid Fire, where he got to co-star with Powers Booth in 1992. A lot of fun. And then obviously we had to talk about his tragic final role in Alex Proyas's 90s goth rock comic book revenge fantasy, The Crow, from 1994, which we got to talk about how it's basically like an industrial emo Death Wish movie, but like if it had like John Woo, like church shootouts, and Brandon really goes for it in his performance.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. I also love just watching him from Rapid Fire to The Crow. His acting progress is really interesting to look at. He's confident, very confident in both, but just his more, he's got to go really theatrical with The Crow, and I think he does a great job. So,
and also be like, I'm not just going to be like the martial arts guy. Like there's parts of Rapid Fire where they're clearly like they're excited about making him a star and being like, this is Bruce Lee's son. The Crow is like, I'm carving out my own space and what I want to be as an actor, and it was kind of cool, but also sad to see, obviously, because he didn't get to develop it any further than that. But if you haven't heard that episode, that was 2 weeks ago that we talked about with Brandon. We went long with Brandon talking about that, who had a lot of knowledge about that subject. And then last week, we did your guys' patron voted episode over on the Patreon, where we talked about an 18th century dueling double feature of Stanley Kubrick's pretty iconic and influential historical epic / tragic comedy, Barry Lyndon, from 1975, whose obviously choice to film it in like this sort of naturally lit motion painting inspired basically how that era was going to be photographed for ever moving forward, including the in the maker of the paired film The Duelists from 1977, which was Ridley Scott pretty shamelessly copying the photographic technique and kind of the sense of irony and petty rituals and customs of these guys in the Napoleonic era, but applying it to a Joseph Conrad novel about a Frenchman who just sort of hate each other but are also sort of best friends because they spend decades just like getting into duels all the time when they're not fighting for Napoleon's war.
Also love watching Ridley Scott not being able to control himself when it comes to the action. Like as soon as the action hits, he's just moving that camera. He's got all the handhelds. Oh yeah,
we joked about it that it was like Kubrick has so much control and so much patience in the way he'll hold a wide shot, and you get the sense that with Ridley he'll hold it for like 5 seconds before he's like, no, we're cutting into the handheld, and these guys are goring each other now. Like
yeah, let's get exciting. Exactly. He just can't help himself, and I love that came into the style.
Different sensibilities going on in last week's episode over on the Patreon. Again, patreon.com/Sleazoids podcast for anyone who's interested. But moving on to this week here, we have yet a release of yet another Hollywood legacy sequel. It seems like it's half of what we've been talking about on the show this year, because we talked about Twister and we talked about The Crow and we talked about an Alien movie. Like back to back to back, we've been getting so many episodes inspired by Hollywood trying to mine this again, and we're going to be doing it again today, where there is a brand new Beetlejuice movie out. By the time you guys are listening to this, actually, it should already be out. Many of you are probably already watching it. But before Jamie and I go and check it out, we decided we were going to go back to the beautiful analog cartoon anarchy origins of the once promising director you might have heard of named Tim Burton. And we are going to be asking the question, has the king returned? Does he have a little juice left in him? We aren't sure yet. But to discuss this topic, we could not think of a better guest than someone who I think, I don't want to speak entirely on his behalf, but I'm pretty sure he considers Burton kind of like one of his formative cinematic idols. You might know him as the host of the Important Cinema Club and Michael and Us. That guest is Toronto's own Will Sloan. Will, welcome back.
Thank you. And sorry, once promising, you're not a fan of Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children?
It's not my favorite, but I respect those who maybe it is. I don't know.
Yes,
man,
yes.
I'm just a little bit older than you guys, so I have vivid memories of being really, really excited for Planet of the Apes. I don't know if you had were you old enough to have that experience?
I did not at all.
Yeah, I wasn't at the time either.
My dad loved Big Fish around that time, though, so I actually watched Big Fish a couple times. For some reason, dads, in my experience, really like Big Fish.
I'm surprised I didn't want to go see Planet of the Apes, though, because I still was into science fiction and all of that at the time. I wouldn't have known that it was a remake or anything at that time.
No, dude, I was Charlie and the Chocolate Factory all the way. I think that's going to be our age difference.
Yeah, that was probably mine too.
I wasn't too old that I wasn't like not looking forward to Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. That was still when the idea of a Tim Burton Johnny Depp movie was kind of exciting, because the last one had been Sleepy Hollow and the one before that was Ed Wood, and it's like, well, hey, I mean, these two together, the Madmen, they're back. And, you know.
And now all anyone can think about is what, Alice in Wonderland or Dark Shadows, or were those the last two?
Those were the last two, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah,
unfortunately. I do like Sweeney Todd. I think that was maybe the last one.
I was going to ask if anyone here rides for Sweeney Todd.
I do ride for Sweeney.
I mean,
yeah.
I like the musical, you know, I like the songs.
Mm-hmm.
I think an issue with Sweeney Todd is the leads can't sing, which is a problem. And also it kind of looks like a generic Tim Burton movie, you know, like my biggest concern going into the new Beetlejuice is there used to be a time when Tim Burton movies were like they would have images in them that would surprise you and delight you.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm concerned that maybe Burton isn't capable of that anymore. And I'm basing that concern only off of his last 10 movies. But I'm hoping for the best.
That's a pretty small pool to judge based on
his
Will.
last 2 decades. Yeah.
And I mean, what could be more promising for a sort of rejuvenation of his style, for fresh new images from Tim Burton than Beetlejuice 2? I think it's a very promising proposition. So I don't know.
Hey, you know what? I saw a clip going around where it looked like he was doing like a Mario Bava pastiche or something in the new Beetlejuice, and I was like, you know what? He didn't do that in the first one, and it kind of looked pretty cool. It looked like a Black Sunday. It looked like a big flashback with Monica Bellucci in it or something. I was like, you know what? This might inspire him to be visually imaginative again for the first time.
I would really like
how long.
I hope so, but I am also old enough to remember when people were doing kind of like a half-hearted Burton's back thing around like Big Eyes. You know, like I feel like Charlie Brown with the football here. But again, you're right to say that he's a formative cinematic idol for me. So I will always be rooting for him.
Yeah, well, that's why we wanted to have you on this week, Will, because we wanted this week to go back to the origins. We are going to be talking about his first two big movies and including his theatrical debut. But Will, what are these two films that we're going to be talking about today? And maybe briefly, what was your experience with them for the first time?
Oh, well, the movies that we're talking about are 1985's Pee-wee's Big Adventure. I believe that's the right year. And 1988's Beetlejuice. Well, Tim Burton is possibly, I mean, maybe with the exception of Steven Spielberg, I think Tim Burton is the first director's name that I knew. Mm-hmm. And also, when Batman Forever came out when I was 6 years old, that was, I think, the first time when it became very apparent to me what a director did and the way that a director's vision could shape a film. And he's very important to me on that level. But also, Batman Returns, Pee-wee, Beetlejuice, and Edward Scissorhands were all movies that meant a lot to me as a child. And then Ed Wood as I got a little bit older as well. And I feel myself getting emotional talking about these movies, actually, and I'm losing the thread of what I was saying. So somebody better come in and save me.
Hey, no, that's that. I mean, I had a similar experience. For me, it was the Batman movies. I had those on VHS, and I was like very in a similar space. It was around the time where I started figuring out that like, oh, people choose these shots because these movies don't look like anything I've ever seen before, and that's something that I think was really exciting about Tim Burton when he first came on the scene. Is he was a very energetic, very young filmmaker, eager to show off what he was visually capable of. He had an animator's mindset, obviously, that he was coming from, which was a lot more dynamic and again energetic. And rewatching these, I was struck by, man, PG 90-minute studio comedies used to look and sound like this? Are you fucking kidding me? I mean, maybe just ones made by Tim Burton, but still, I was blown away by these. And actually, Pee-wee, I didn't watch for the first time until last year, when Paul Rubens passed away, actually. And I was like, I literally was like kicking myself. I was like, dude, I could have been watching this for like 20 years. It's amazing.
Yeah. Pee-wee for me was kind of one of those movies that I only saw glimpses of when I was a kid. And one in particular, and we'll talk about it, which was the Large Marge sequence, which is kind of scary. And I just remember that really sticking with me, honestly. And I hadn't really seen the rest of it up until a couple of years ago. But his craft is unbelievable. And I remember even with Edward Scissorhands, where it has like, the houses that all look the same but have different colors, but it's just very vibrant still. He has that idea of like, sinking you into the kind of childhood wonder and then showing you all the darkness beneath. And that was always very intriguing to me. So I loved his style as a kid too.
Oh, yeah, dude. Edward Scissorhands, first time I ever saw Vincent Price.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of like baby's first David Lynch, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I mentioned Steven Spielberg before. Like, if you were a kid of approximately my vintage, and maybe yours as well, like Steven Spielberg is obviously like the default of what a big movie is, what a famous director is. And then there's Tim Burton, who is sort of like, your introduction, baby's first introduction to the idea of a weird filmmaker. The Batman movies, for example, are just as like gigantic and full of special effects as a Steven Spielberg movie, but they're about these like weird, maladjusted characters, and there's this mixture of, I don't know if camp is the right word, maybe kitsch is the right word, with like horror and semi-extreme violence. That is quite, I think, it's a little bit challenging and quite intoxicating for like a small child. And Pee-wee's Big Adventure and Beetlejuice, which are softer movies than the Batman movies are, have a bit of that too. Like the Large Marge scene, as you said.
Yeah. Very memorable when you're young.
Yeah, so I'm excited to dive into this this guy who at one time was looking like one of the most astonishing visual stylists and weirdo personalities in studio genre filmmaking. Let's jump into it here. Let's kick things off with Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
Merry Christmas!
Pee-wee Herman is Pee-wee Herman.
Hello!
In Pee-wee's Big Adventure,
Be sure and tell them Large Marge sent ya.
What? Well,
All right, we are talking Pee-wee's Big Adventure, the 1985 absurdist comedy adventure road movie directed by Tim Burton, written by Phil Hartman, Michael Vorhall, and Paul Rubens, and starring, obviously, Paul Rubens as the titular Pee-wee Herman, an eccentric slapstick man-child character that he had originally developed for the improv and stand-up comedy stage, and based on the popularity of the character, eventually became an HBO special and a show and various late night appearances and this movie and an entire children's television show, Pee-wee's Playhouse, that ran into the early 90s. This is our second time talking about, again, the at one time respected visual artist, animator turned studio genre filmmaker, Tim Burton. whose background in graphic visual art and hand-drawn and stop-motion animation and concept storyboarding for Disney and love of all things Universal Monsters and Grimm Fairy Tales and Vincent Price and fucking Dr. Seuss and Roald Dahl, all of these things resulted in a very, very popular gothic, expressionist, and surrealist visual design style that really took on some like old school animated physical comedy and, you know, incorporated tons of amazing in-camera and analog effects that we'll talk about. And he soon became one of the most sought after studio filmmakers of the late 80s and early 90s before becoming the sort of laughing stock or poster child for the kind of lazy digital CGI slop conversion of the 2000s onward, where unfortunately his name kind of became synonymous with an ugly looking Hot Topic parody of his sort of previously beloved circus goth aesthetic.
If you were a really like alt 9-year-old in the year 2010, then you probably loved Alice in Wonderland. So, you know, perhaps we're dating ourselves with this take.
I think we are, because I mean, we were all mentioning the ones that like we grew up loving and how, you know, he was maybe one of the earliest filmmakers that made us think, wow, like that's what a visual director does. Alice in Wonderland, I think, was the first time. It was not the first time, but it was one of the earliest times where I went, oh, a good filmmaker can suck ass. And it was something I never really thought that much about, because I was like, I wasn't that skeptical of directors that I liked. I was like, oh, you know, I liked Christopher Nolan movies at the time. I liked Tarantino movies at the time. Burton, you know, he was still kind of up there, mostly because all I had available to me were like the VHSs and DVDs of the good ones. I didn't actually watch I didn't watch Planet of the Apes until way, way, way later.
Yeah, me neither.
So I was like, no, this guy just made the Batman movies.
That movie
That's why he's a
made
legend.
Alice in Wonderland made over $1 billion, which is insane. That feels like the world being in a state of temporary insanity. But I mean, I felt very strange. Like, was it 2 years ago when Wednesday came out on Netflix? And I was just kind of watching it out of the corner of my eye thinking, oh, this is more shit from Burton. But then I found out that apparently the kids love Wednesday. Yeah. Like everybody who's like 16 years old thinks Wednesday is the greatest thing. So man, I don't know. I feel like Tommy Lee Jones at the end of No Country for Old Men when it comes to that.
Does he direct that, or is it produced by him?
I think no, he directed the whole thing, I think.
Oh, okay.
Or at least a lot of it.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Yeah. I mean, I never checked it out. Didn't think it was.
Do you know what? I think that's just a sign of the kids are in need. There's no one who stepped up to like give them what Tim Burton gave us, and they are just hungry.
I think with Alice,
that's so true.
And I think with Alice in Wonderland, it's kind of those like, it's like a happy accident thing where you have Alice in Wonderland, which is just it's a massively beloved story, and then you have Tim Burton, who you'd think that those two stories would really mesh well. It's just that it also happened to be in the era of just CGI slop. So you have the kind of triple threat there that it ended up a complete mess. But it makes sense that it would be super popular, I guess.
Yeah. Two other factors with Alice in Wonderland at that time. The 3D boom was in full swing. That movie came out like
1 year after Avatar, right?
Oh, yeah.
A few months.
Very close to, it was a few months. And they did horrible post conversion. That movie's pretty dingy looking already, and then they slapped shit fake 3D on top of it, so like you couldn't even fucking see it when you were watching it. But anyway, I think that got a lot of people in. And also, easy to forget, Johnny Depp's stock was really high when that movie came out.
Pirates of the Caribbean and all of that, I think, or it was like right after it or something like that.
Yeah, he was massive at that time, so I don't know.
It was the perfect storm. Perfect hurricane.
Well, do you know what? Maybe he should have made a bunch more movies with Paul Rubens instead, because Pee-wee's Big Adventure, having only watched it for the first time last year, I was actually kind of blown away by this movie. One, because it's obviously it's Burton's debut, and it's a very confidently made and very impressive debut. But also it's like, and some I think argued at the time that this was kind of like something that had movie like not going in its favor. I think it was maybe I think it was maybe Dave Care's review mentioned that, or maybe it was Cale's review actually. Someone mentioned that like Burton's direction was like solid, but like it was kind of a non-factor in the movie, which I actually think is insane opinion to have. But I think what they meant by that was that it's not as so fully personally stylized, like we'll talk about with Beetlejuice, which is so fully his exact sensibility and the things he grew up on and the things that he loves and the designs that he loves. And Pee-wee is a little bit more of like a general, it's Ruben's interests, it's Phil Hartman's interests, and it's all of those things that he's helping realize and he's helping heighten, because I'm sure a lot of people are familiar, but this came out after a string of like very successful sort of like stop motion and live action shorts that he did, including one called Vincent, which was based on Vincent Price, and also a dog Frankenstein movie called Frankenweenie, which famously got him fired from Disney for making it instead of doing his actual job. And they said, dude, we're not paying you to fucking make Frankenweenie, you fucking asshole. And he later obviously remade that into a full-length feature animated film. And it was Frankenweenie that apparently caught the attention of the New York comedian Paul Rubens, who had been enjoying the success of the Pee Wee Herman character that he had developed during his improv comedy days. And I wanted to ask you, Will, were you like a big like Pee-wee guy outside of Tim Burton, or did Burton like kind of bring you into that? Because I know a lot of people grew up on the show. I personally actually didn't really watch the show, and I actually kind of knew a lot of people who weren't allowed to watch the show, which I wasn't sure if anyone else had experienced anyone who wasn't allowed. And because I was trying to figure that out, and I was like, some of it might have been a little bit of the masturbation scandal, and parents were just like, you can't watch a children's show by a guy who was in the headlines that way. Or also, maybe it was parents found him annoying and didn't want their kids to behave like that. It was like a Bart Simpson thing. They were like, you can't.
If my kid starts talking like this, it's fucking game over.
If he starts honking and causing chaos around the household, then, he's a bad influence, even though I got to say, Beetlejuice, way more of a pervert than Pee-wee, and should have been banned from households way sooner than Pee-wee.
Well, I would have been a huge Pee-wee kid had I really had access to Pee-wee, but I think by the time I wasn't old enough to experience the Pee-wee's Playhouse when it was in first run. And then I think I was 3 years old when, the Florida movie theater incident happened. So his show wasn't on TV when I was a kid. I saw some episodes. I rented them on VHS from the video store. I knew someone who had the Christmas special on VHS, so I would see that. My parents actually showed me the wrong Pee-wee movie. They showed me Big Top Pee-wee because they thought I would find that funny, and I didn't. Big Top Pee-wee was one of the first movies I ever saw where I thought, oh, I don't like this. But then I saw Pee-wee's Big Adventure and thought it was great. But, I was aware that there were issues around Pee-wee. And I remember that my parents, I think their general attitude, and I even picked up on this when I was a kid, their attitude was like, whatever it was that he did, he shouldn't have lost his show over it or something like that. So I knew that there was like a cloud hanging over Pee-wee, but I didn't quite know why. And I suspect that a lot of parents probably... I got the general sense that a lot of parents wouldn't let their kids watch Pee-wee, not for any really rational reason, I think, except that they thought there was something, they picked up on something, or the Florida movie theater incident crystallized in their minds that there was something just a little bit off about Pee-wee. There was a certain subtext in the Pee-wee character that was always kind of there, but maybe they couldn't quite put their finger on. And then when he was behaving strangely in a Florida movie theater, they realized, Pee-wee's gay. I think that's probably what happened, So I think the backlash to Pee-wee Herman was very, undergirded with a lot of homophobia, basically. Mm-hmm. And it's a shameful chapter in American history.
Yeah, Pee-wee was just, he literally started as like this man-child character who his whole bit was that he just like wasn't good at comedy. Like he wasn't good at stand-up. And that was like the bit, is that it was like this just adorable dork who wanted to be good. And he was bombing like the Joker. Like that was kind of like the original idea of Pee-wee.
Which is why a lot of the humor in this is like these really corny jokes, but because of his over-the-top and ridiculous delivery, that's kind of what makes them funny, if anything.
The way he moves his eyebrows, the way he talks like a
but it's
annoying preteen boy.
Yeah, but it's the simplest of gags, like using a giant ear and then just, or using a horn and honking it or something like that. Like it's very just clown behavior.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and the Pee-wee's Christmas special, which I've seen many, many, many times over the years, it's full of, like, one of the things it does is take every really corny Christmas special cliche and just present it. So, like, there's a running gag on that special where everybody keeps bringing Pee-wee a fruitcake, and he hates fruitcakes. A classic people hate fruitcakes gag. And just presenting these musty old jokes, but with a sort of like postmodern knowingness. By the way, if Tim Burton is like baby's first David Lynch, Pee Wee Herman is really baby's first John Waters, I think, in his sort of like
accurate
sensibility. Yeah. And, speaking of the Christmas special, I'm just reading the list of guest stars on it. They included Grace Jones, Katie Lang, Little Richard, Cher, Magic Johnson, Charo. I mean, something that unites a lot of these characters, in addition to being, like kitsch icons, is that they're basically like gay icons. You know what I mean? So what he was getting away with on children's TV, pretty commendable, I think.
Yeah, well, and the fact that he developed this character into something that was just like so energetic and so animated, and obviously became, this, being able to. I always appreciate when someone who's working and generating art for children is finding a way to actually make them literate at, putting in a postmodern gag that they're going to have to grow up with, or they're going to have to learn to figure out, or teaching them the visual sensibilities of classic comedy, of going back to things like Buster Keaton and being like, it actually takes craft, and the kid, starts to figure out the construction of it and has to think about it. And there's something I've always appreciated about people who manage to translate that into something that kids can enjoy and do it in a, put on the silly cartoon outfit and voice. And sometimes, that's the easiest way to get a gag for a kid. It's just, he honks as a laugh. And, and there was something about how committed he was to the Pee Wee Herman character. I mean, it's funny, in this movie, he is Pee Wee Herman as himself, is the credit. And Paul Rubens would frequently, kind of occasionally tried to live his public life, or did interviews in character as Pee-wee, and tried to, which is maybe partially why the scandal hurt him more than it might have even somebody else as well, because people were just the character was so inseparable from him. And either way, I guess
when people saw the mugshot, like, you've seen his mugshot, right?
I have.
It looks so different from Pee Wee Herman. And I read recently that he didn't. Like, he was on a million late night talk shows, but he only appeared as himself in the 2000s. It took that long for anybody to like see the actual Paul Rubens.
Yeah, I think it was it was 8 years since the incident or something. It took him 8 years to get work again, and then he started working in, I think one of the movies was Blow. But I can't remember the other one. But yeah, it
well,
took
he
him a
sort
while.
of like worked throughout the 90s as a character actor. He was in, I want to say he was in Dunstan Checks In. I think he was in Matilda.
He was, yeah.
He was
remember that. Yeah.
He's in Batman Returns, actually, as the Penguin's father. Tim Burton threw him a bone after the incident. Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah. Yeah.
But Blow was like a big sort of comeback attempt from him.
Mm-hmm.
And I think like the areas where Paul Rubens and Tim Burton sort of find common ground are pretty obvious. One is, Tim Burton obviously likes his eccentrics and his outsiders, his misfits and nonconformists. And they also unite in a shared love of a certain kind of like kitsch Americana, as well as like in both their sensibilities, there's this mashup of lots of different crap from lots of different eras. So like the towns in Pee-wee's Big Adventure have stuff from like, the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, the 80s, all mashed together in a way like similar, at least in a certain way, to like Gotham City and Batman, where it's like the 40s and the 80s all in one stew.
Yeah, and they have a similar, obviously, like kind of like animated energy, which is what I think he maybe saw in Burton and was what made him, sort of interested in bringing him on for what he and what Rubens and Hartman wrote here, which was basically this very goofy sort of like meta LA movie studio lot take on, as they called it, they were doing their version of Bicycle Thieves, obviously the Italian neorealist film, which was a very, very loose plot of, a bike getting stolen, Pee-wee's bike. He loves that bike. He's got to get that bike back. And there was actually this great quote about them saying that they kind of came up with it using like one of those like screenwriting helper manuals where they were like, it's a 90-minute film. It's a 90-page script. On page 30, he loses the bike. On page 60, he finds the bike. And war chaos ensues, and they were like, and this was like, this was the formula that was trusted, that a Hollywood movie studio would like. And in between, we can fill it with all of the personality. We can usually use it as a very loose string for all of these very, very funny and elaborately constructed like cartoon set pieces, and turn it into this silly road movie where Pee-wee gets to run into all of these bizarre outcasts and weirdos, which, Will's spot on that Burton is frequently obviously a lot more attracted to than any of the, even when he puts like normal or straight characters in a movie, they're like the characters who like become sidelined characters. I mean, we'll talk about it with Beetlejuice, but like that's an example of like there's kind of some straight arrow characters in that, and you think they're the protagonists, and then you're like, no, this movie gets derailed by all of the weird digressions that Burton actually likes to make. And you can see that Paul Rubens likes to as well, and obviously Hartman too, who was obviously well known for SNL and the golden age of the Simpsons as well. Dude was fucking Troy McClure. So like these guys knew comedy, and even just the range of parodies of American movie archetypes they managed to fit into this in such just a straight bullet of a movie is impressive. Like, it's so anarchic, it's so inventive. The movie moves. I actually, when I was rewatching it, and I was rewatching it with someone who I watched it with the first time, and we both went, I actually don't remember the exact events of this movie. I just remember so many of the gags, and I couldn't exactly remember how he gets from place to place as he does them, but the gags themselves are so memorable. It's kind of the appeal of the movie, I think.
And the thing is that there's so many. Like, a lot of these times, these moments, these scenes where he's in one location, they only last a matter of 5 minutes, and then he's just on to the next location. So it just does feel like it almost feels like it could be messier than it actually turns out to be. But the gags are so well thought out and funny that you just kind of get locked into his brain and his perspective. I mean, he's on a wild goose chase to begin with, right? Like, we see him go to the Alamo because he's told by a psychic at a certain point that that's where his bike is, and that's not where his bike is, and so he's already just on an adventure that is kind of pointless at first. I mean, he knows what he's after, but really it's directionless. He doesn't know where it is whatsoever, really what he's doing. And that allows them to be very loose with the characters that he meets and the gags that they can come up with, and it's great. I mean, it really works for the film. And I also love that he constantly stumbles into successes, but with a lot of confidence. Like, even in the beginning, I mean, I guess this isn't really a stumbling example, but just that he's a super confident character for how dorky and silly he is. And he's a very almost skilled character. Like, in the beginning where there's the Tour de France and he's biking faster than everybody, it reminded me of kind of like a Buster Keaton gag or something like that. I think it's pretty incredible what they ended up doing, just making it a movie about gags rather than anything that's really super deep or anything like that.
Well, they also want you to know how much he loves his bike. That's what that whole dream is about. Like the shiny red saturated bike of his Schwinn bike. He's got the spirals and the fucking like flowing strings on the handlebars, and he's honking and he's laughing, and he's got the outfit with the red bow tie and the slicked hair, and he is like being crowned king of France in his dream before waking up in his perfect like 50s suburban decor toy house, essentially, where we're introduced to his like Rube Goldberg like morning routine, where he's like pulling his alarm, which starts a record, and he's dancing in his slippers on his Bambi floor mat. And the thing that I was really struck by watching Paul Rubens' performance is how maniacal he is about his like precociousness and how like it's so there's so much control in the performance when he does like a moment like when he grabs the tiny little dumbbells and he can like hardly lift them up and he's like he's like getting his morning workout in,
so satisfied with himself.
And the way that he'll scream when he's like, "Watch out, Mr. Potato Head," as he's like ramming a fire truck into him, but he's also generating like a kind of a cruel scenario himself because he's the one ramming the fire truck into Mr. Potato Head. He's a man of contrast, Mr. Pee-wee.
Well, one of the many things I love about this movie is that like the Pee-wee character is incredibly abrasive and is a bit of a jerk through most of the movie. And it feels like that would have only been made possible by the fact that this character had already, like, he'd come up through, you know, improv comedy in Los Angeles and then through the talk show circuit. He was on David Letterman so many times. So he'd independently gained a lot of popularity. It's impossible to imagine, like, a character that's this difficult on the surface of it, making it through the studio process. But like, those are all the characters that are iconic, right? You know, it's not the Poochies of the world. It's these prickly, difficult characters who are on the knife edge of being incredibly annoying, who end up being the ones that people love the most.
Yeah.
Well, and the fact that he causes chaos for everyone around him, like the fact that he'll, like, one of the first things we see him do is, like, you know, like we're seeing how excited he is about everything in his house and how much fun he has and how excited he is about a new day and everything. But I was struck by that moment when he warns his neighbor that he's going to water his lawn, and the neighbor's like, okay, and the neighbor literally closes his window, and I'm like, wait, what? And then he turns his watering hoses on, and they're literally just like those like wacky inflatable tube men arms just shooting water in every direction. It was like, oh yeah, he's just an asshole. Like, his neighbor is like, yeah, thanks, I don't want to get my living room all wet, so Pee-wee's gotta warn me about that. It's funny how they'll throw in a detail like that along, like, just more like silly cute things, like him brushing his teeth with like a giant brush that's like literally the size of his mouth and like hardly works, or talking to his breakfast that he calls Mr. Breakfast.
Yeah. But then, in fairness to Pee-wee, you know, at the end of the movie, spoiler, when they're at the drive-in and you re-encounter all the friends he's made along the way, it's like, what other character would cultivate such a broad group of friends, from like ex-cons to Hell's Angels bikers to, the cool bike guys at the mall to like everybody just loves Pee-wee because Pee-wee loves everybody.
Yeah.
So like,
he's
that's
an accepting person.
like there's like sweet and sour in the character, you know?
Yeah, and he's like, he comes off not exactly grateful, at least in the beginning, for the people he does have in his life, like Dottie, for instance. There's a funny moment where, you know, she's she wants to, you know, go out on a date with him and really, really likes him, and so he's kind of like making scratches on the phone so that she thinks that the phone's giving out, so he doesn't have to talk to her anymore. And as soon as he hangs up the phone, he just smiles and does this little silly laugh, like he's totally self-satisfied with what he just did. And it's such a
I'm a loner, Dottie, a rebel. You don't want to get mixed up with a guy like me. He's trying to play it all cool too, even though obviously he's like very incredibly dorky, and dorky in a way that I find relatable, because he's not like dorky. He's not getting like very into like comic books. His version of it is like, his favorite story is like Mario's Magic Shop, where he's like picking up like, you know, X-ray glasses and shrunken heads, and he's giving them trick gum and all of this stuff. Like, it's very, very silly in his way of mixing, as Will was saying, like all of these different time periods, because he is interested in this kind of stuff that you would think that you would almost like silent era physical comedians would be more interested in, mixed with the kind of like 80s man-child like candy and toys, which is very much like what the decor of like his house is. And obviously also the how the world and reality like bends to his character in that sense too, because like he's really into his bike, but also as a result the whole community is into the bike. When he's biking around, like the BMX kids are like doing tricks, and some of them are like, way to go, Pee-wee, or some of them are like kind of, you know, maybe condescending a little bit to Pee-wee, but they do recognize that like everyone, I mean, there's one part, it's the scene right after he loses his bike, which is one of my favorites, which is where he's so sad about his bike and he's walking around, and whether it makes sense or not, literally every character around him has a bike, and everyone has their own unique bike that suits their personality. There's like a pizza delivery guy who's got a special bike. There's like a clown with like one of those like really tall like front wheel bikes. There's like a little toy doll who has like a little, you know, RC car motorcycle bike, and like every single person has a bike except for Pee-wee. And that's the kind of gag way that it kind of gets the emotional aspect of the character across. Like the world just absolutely bends to him in a really interesting way.
Yeah, the style even starts to get a little bit more. I mean, it's wacky throughout the entire thing, but this almost gets almost like conspiratorial. Like at one point, he's watching the tires spin. It almost feels like a hypnotic thing that Hitchcock would use in a conspiracy thriller or something like that. And then there's like, I love his shock and disdain for anyone that won't take it seriously, because he's reporting it as if, you know, his wife was murdered or something like that, or his kid was stolen.
He wants to call Dragnet, and then one of the Soviets must be involved in this.
Right, exactly. Like it's just, you know, so serious.
The world building that Burton does in this movie is pretty extraordinary. I think it was Dave Kerr's review where he says that Burton's direction is sort of a non-factor, which is like the sort of thing you could only say if this is his first movie and all you know going in is Pee Wee Herman, because he's the known quantity. But I have to assume that this is Burton's least expensive movie by like, you know, an enormous factor. And he does, like, considering what a huge impression the visuals of this movie make and the world of the movie makes, he does surprisingly, he does a lot with a little, you know. It's not like the production design isn't exactly maximalist. It's just the really shrewd deployment of certain familiar objects and, you know,
and kind of crowding it shown in time.
Strange juxtapositions or just like odd angles or familiar things put in a new perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Or just like interesting uses, I think, of like maybe a location that someone else would use, but they wouldn't use it in the same way that he thinks to use it. Right. Because I think this comes from kind of his cartoon sensibility. But one of the first times I thought about that watching this was the spoiled like adult man-child rich kid character Francis, played by Mark Holton. A small detail like the way that he has like a jumpsuit on that has like his initials in it, which shows you that like he's the kid who kind of comes from money and he's the kid who really wants his bike, and they get into that very brief like, I know you are, but what am I, like fight kind of going back and forth. And just,
okay, well, speaking of how good the world building in this movie is, like Burton also knows exactly how much to give you of like why this universe is the way it is. And there's a lot of ambiguity about how a guy like Pee-wee can be and how he functions in society. Like Burton isn't telling you like how he affords this house. But like when Francis shows up in the neighborhood and all of a sudden you've got these two like adult man children yelling at each other, you come to understand, okay, this universe is a universe where there are man children and this is just the way it is. And maybe there's a reason for it, but these characters are so committed to who they are. And there's nobody in this universe is questioning these people and their place in society. So therefore you don't question it. You have to accept the cartoon logic on a certain level, which is what I was thinking about, because the scene I was thinking about was the one where he goes to Francis because he assumes that when the bike goes missing, he assumes that it's
Francis, or actually he goes to the police, and the policewoman says, is there anyone who, maybe had, anything against you or your bike? And it takes her help to be like, oh, Francis said that he was gonna, it was his birthday and he was gonna take my bike, and that, he deserved it. And he goes and he knocks on his door, and it's one of the first scenes where you really get to see how mean and vindictive Pee-wee can be, like on a dime. He's like, absolutely, he's like, Francis is busy, he's taking his bath, and he's like, where are they hosing him down? And then when he goes in there, this is, I think, what Burton does that's different is he frames it as Francis is a man-child, so he's in a mansion swimming pool essentially. But the way that he shoots it, it's like Francis is pretending to be like Godzilla with a bunch of toy boats, which then makes the scene feel like he's literally in like a little child in a bathtub. Big tub, but that's purely through visual design that you get that impression, right? And like that's something that I think.
Then you get the Eastern Promises moment where he holds his hair and beats him in that tub. You know what I mean? So you get,
dude, he is torturing, and he's gonna drown the information out of Francis about where his bike went.
Oh, yeah, it's
by the way, shout out to Mark Holton. Mark Holton, the underappreciated hero of this movie. People may know him from his unforgettable appearance, I should say, in The Naked Gun, where he's the guy at the baseball stadium who says, "Look, it's Enrico Palazzo." I don't know. Do you guys remember that moment?
I think
I'm telling you,
yeah.
Any Naked Gun fans out there know that moment. It's him. It's Francis.
I love Mark Holton is very funny. I know I've seen him in. Oh my God, that's where I've seen him from. We saw him in a couple of the Leprechauns, I think, or one of them.
Oh, was he?
Plays Ozzy Jones in the Leprechaun film series.
There's a TV movie where he plays John Wayne Gacy. I'm sure you'll want to do an episode on that. I'm sure that's well worth thinking
Oh,
about.
boy.
Oh, hell yeah. Francis is John
I'm
Wayne.
Adding to the watch list right now. But yes, no, I do enjoy basically all the scenes with Mark Holton, but also what they bring out of Pee-wee. Like the fact that it is like there's something funny about the vindictiveness of like what art would be like 8-year-old boys, but it's just being done by these like adult men who there's something a little bit scarier of a quality it takes on, where Pee-wee is literally, what does he say? He's like, we're miles away from anyone can hear you, so go ahead and like scream your head off.
Yeah,
it's like what he's saying, and you're like, Jesus Christ, Pee-wee.
It's gonna take him out to the desert. It's absolutely
your bike got
nuts.
stolen outside of Chuck's Bike-orama, and
the contrast of the characters are always great. Like even if most of them that you run into are pretty cartoonish, and that is fun to watch two cartoon characters just kind of interact with each other. But what I like about it is they also make him very good with the ladies, and those are probably the two most normal characters. And so you have that contrast as well, where he's just the strangest dude that you would just never be able to imagine on a date.
In love with Pee-wee. He's got crazy swag levels. Yeah, the tight little suit, the honking laughs. Everyone is like, this guy.
Pure animal magnetism. Yeah, it's. I love that they made that. Part of his character.
You guys were mentioning the plot, how it's sort of really more a collection of scenes than a story. And, if you look at reviews of Tim Burton's movies from like, I want to say the Batman Returns, Ed Wood era, you'll find critics are often saying like it becomes an article of faith that Tim Burton isn't really good at story. They say that over and over again. I mean, I think the stories in those movies are like perfectly fine. They get from A to B in an entirely logical way. But yeah, all his movies at that time are just a collection of, ultimately they're collections of set pieces. They're collections of like striking scenes and images. And the danger with that approach is the movie has to rise and fall on the quality of each individual scene, because in this movie, the search for the bike has no forward momentum. There's no like cause and effect of he goes here, which gives him a clue to take him there, and he gets more information that he goes there. He just simply finds himself in a number of different places until he
spends half the movie derailed going to the Alamo where it isn't, and we don't actually get any view of. There's like one scene where we find out that like Francis like hired some neighborhood goons to like steal it, and they're gonna go like sell it to someone, and that's part of the movie just disappears for about 45 minutes while Pee-wee goes and totally pursues a road trip to a place where the bike isn't. But the beauty of this movie is I think you forget that and you go, oh, Pee-wee is just going place to place, picking up friends. And this is totally enjoyable when you watch the movie that way.
Yeah, they even make that. Excuse me. They even make that part of the gag where before he goes off to the Alamo, he's at kind of a crossroads, and the bike is on a truck, and then he doesn't notice it, and then he goes off with their like serial killer convict. So the movie's even just like, all right, just say goodbye. This guy's going to be totally.
The
off
movie
the track.
could have been over if Pee-wee turned his head like a few inches.
Exactly.
And never do they explain how the bike made its way to Hollywood, and it doesn't matter.
Yep.
They don't care. We don't care. And instead of like narrative momentum, what the movie has is this accumulation of strange detail and, colorful characters. And the movie has such confidence in like every gag, and it has such confidence in the weird world that it's built that that is the momentum,
Yeah.
Like you get curious about this world and how this world works and what sort of people live in the world. And as the movie goes along, you just become more and more interested in that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, for me, I'm totally one because I like the early stuff in the movie as well, but I can kind of see the conventional sort of formula that they're referring to when they said that they were writing it, and that there's some very interesting detail in the Pee-wee character, but the basic scenes he's being forced to interact with are just like there's a neighborhood bully character, and there's a girl who has a crush on him, and there's the local kids who either kind of look up to him or maybe condescend to him, and he has a relationship with them, and it's all very basic stuff that you do entirely rely on the Pee-wee character to make feel different for you. But around the time where he becomes really maniacal about getting this bike back to the point where he's actually alienating everyone who wants to help him, which is a kind of a detail you don't think another movie would have. Like the fact that Pee-wee is when he's putting up the reward sign and he's kind of mistreating Dottie. She's like, how are you going to pay a reward like that? And he's just like, simple. Whoever returns the bike is obviously the person who stole it and they don't deserve any reward. And then he's holding that big meeting where he's like, Exhibit A, my bike and me. Exhibit B, another photograph. What's missing from this picture? It's just me without my bike.
Another one of my favorite moments is when they're like, what's the significance? And he's like, I don't know. And then what I love about that scene too is how he has been able to at least get a bunch of friends together. It does have this idea that the community does respect him and does want to listen to him.
Everyone loves Pee-wee, but he's also just being like a weird asshole that they don't want to help. And so that's why he gets completely alienated and he needs to seek the help of the fortune teller who tells him that the bike is in the basement of the Alamo. And for me, that is when the movie hits its real stride, and it basically maintains it until the very end of the movie. As soon as he needs to hitchhike and he's going classic silent era hobo sack on a stick, and he's picked up by it's the convict, right? It's Mickey, the Judd Omen character, the runaway convict, with a broken handcuff on his arm, and he's turning the radio on where it's we're pursuing someone armed and dangerous, and Pee-wee's not putting two and two together, and it's the way that he just from here seems to find people who I guess are also in a sort of desperate situation like him. And he starts, he's pursuing his own selfish stuff still, but he's also kind of willing to help other people along the way, which is where I think the character really starts to connect. And it really is for me that scene when the convict is I'm being chased because those do not remove under penalty of law tags on the mattresses. Yeah, well, I tore it off. He's like, gee, and he's like, yeah, I have a real bad temper. And then he goes into drag for him to protect him from the cop highway check that they're doing, but does so in a way where just great comedic timing where they're both we're outcasts, we're running from the law, and they're the law, yeah, the law. And then they both freak out, the law. And then they switch their outfits. He's got a mustache, Pee-wee's in his outfit and putting on his little performance. And even just the way that like his performance changes the world around him and he delights everyone around him. The cop is like, ma'am, I'm going to need you to step out of that car so I can see your cute little outfit.
Yeah, I was like, wait, we should address that part. No?
Yeah, yeah.
The way that scene ends.
Yeah, and Mickey smirks at him, which I was trying to figure out. Are you supposed to register that he's like happy about how helpful he was, or does he want to fuck Pee-wee?
He wants to fuck Pee-wee. Mickey is very clearly checking Pee-wee out.
Everyone wants to fuck Pee-wee. Yeah, it's
beautiful.
Men and women alike. Yep, everybody wants a piece of that Pee-wee. Yeah, it's great. And then I love this too because it's like you have this kind of this funny kind of physical gag, and then when he gets upset with him and leaves him in the middle of nowhere, it kind of turns into this animated gag where it just goes all black, and then you can just see his animated white eyes, and that's what's filling up the screen, and you hear a bunch of wildlife because he's getting scared and everything. I just love the in and out of kind of like the different styles that Tim Burton will use. Because later on, we'll see claymation quite a bit as well.
And the way that he will use something cheap but like effective. Because I think the scene you're referring to is that the one where he puts like the headlight on his head at one point and he lights it up and he's meant to be surrounded by animals, but it's literally just like stuffed bears.
Yeah, like taxidermy there's like maybe animals essentially.
Yeah, there's like one like real raccoon in there and he just screams his head off and then turns it off again. You know? Like again, the cartoon logic and the sort of like cheap sort of chintzy stylization of it and how 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 effective and how much advantage Burton manages to pull out of it is really skillful. Because this is only a $7 million movie and it's pretty ambitious in terms of how many different places he goes and how many visual constructed slapstick set pieces he's going to fit into this movie. Like it does feel like you're always looking at something interesting and detailed.
Yeah, and this happens so fast. This is just moment to moment. You get the convict gag, which has 5 gags built into it. You have the animated cartoon in the forest gag. Immediately, I think this is when he gets picked up by Large Marge, and
which is its own movie in and of itself because she literally and they waste no time. He literally gets into the truck. It's his second time hitchhiking, and you get Alice Nunn just ominously being like, "On this very night, 10 years
right away,
ago."
Too. There's no beat. Like there's no like, oh, how have you been today or whatever, and then she kind of like subtly goes into it. She just starts the ghost story. The scene just goes from the gag of being in the forest to this ghost story now, and I just love how
ends
quickly
it by turning into a claymation monster, courtesy of the Chiodo brothers, who were obviously did like Critters and like Killer Clowns from Outer Space. It's a really cool effect.
Yeah, it's great. This is the one that I saw when I was a kid, and it legitimately scared the hell out of me. I was like, "That's terrifying." Even if it has this very cartoonish quality to it, there's something so detailed and bizarre about the whole thing. It's awesome.
He got picked up by a ghost trucker.
Yes. Yes.
Takes him to the truck stop where you get that. This is like a place in California, I guess, but it has like giant like dinosaur statues, like just great location finding as well. And and just the fact that this is so strung together so loosely that he's just like, oh yeah, he can't pay for his tuna sandwich, so now he's a dishwasher.
And then they kind of use it to still get to know his character a little bit. It's all very simple stuff, but it works. It just makes him very likable as the movie goes on because he is an asshole.
He's not going to rip them off. He's going to work back his tuna sandwich.
Yeah, exactly. He does that, and then he's telling the waitress to pursue her dream of going and living in Paris when her boyfriend is telling her not to. Like he's becoming more of a likable character instead of just like this incredibly selfish prick that's just hyper focused on finding his bike and that's it.
Even though he does it a little bit incidentally. I do love the conversation he has with that waitress Simone, where she's like trying to ask him if he has dreams. He's like, yeah, I'm all alone. I'm rolling a big donut and the snake is wearing a vest. She's like, that's not what I'm referring to. And then I think there's the other one too, where she's just like, she says but at one point, like she's, going to stop herself from saying what her dream is. And he's like, but what? Everyone I know has a big butt. Come on, Simone, let's talk about your big butt.
That's a good line. But that's the beauty of some of these lines too, is that it's like a lot of it is kind of juvenile, but it's just breaking that threshold of still being funny and not just unbelievably annoying, I guess.
And then any time it feels like it slows down, it's just like it throws something at you. Like, it's like they're having a beautiful sunrise conversation inside of a dinosaur, which is a scene you've not seen in a movie before. And then her boyfriend shows up with a bit and wants to literally beat Pee-wee to death with a big dinosaur bone.
Very skillful deployment of that scene, I think. Like to have a sort of, tender scene that allows Pee-wee to be, just a little bit more human, but also human entirely on his own terms. And that's like set inside of a dinosaur. So it's, woven into the fabric of the movie, the texture of the movie. Very well done.
Even the shot itself, like it's not, the shot of the sunrise is the framing is the teeth of the dinosaur making the shot, like kind of making the frame itself. And then you see the sunrise. So it has that extra cartoonish quality to it.
Yeah. It's not like a tender scene or like a humanizing scene that's just been grafted onto the movie. It feels organic to the movie, or it feels like it's working on the movie's terms.
Yeah. Yeah. And then even, and then again, it's all built so that he gets to the next place, which is him on a train because he has to escape the boyfriend. And that's a way for him to travel to the next place and so on and so forth.
So singing songs with the homeless man who offers him his last sardine, and eventually getting so annoyed of singing songs that he leaps off the train and finds the big howdy partner like Alamo sign, where he's like, finally, which just randomly he has finally made it to where he needs to go.
And it's so funny to think, obviously, like Pee-wee is annoyed with somebody. He's the hobo's just singing songs. He's like, this is too much for me. This guy's voice is annoying. Am I right? Hops off of a moving train. Oh man.
Yeah. No, but for me, my absolute favorite sequence is the Satan's Helper biker bar sequence, which is just like one of the all-time great like 80s comedy set pieces, because it kicks off because Pee-wee has arrived in Texas, but the bike obviously isn't there. He has a whole sequence where he goes on like that whole like corny southerner like tourism thing of the Alamo, with the SNL's Jan Hooks is there kind of delivering it to him, and he waits to the very end to ask, and he finds out that there's no basement there, and everyone laughs at him. Just a briefly like sad moment, and it's a moment of humility for him. I think that's the scene you were talking about, Jamie, where he calls Dottie on the phone and he gets on the payphone call with her, which I will say my favorite detail is that when Speck, his dog, gets on the phone.
Oh yeah.
he's like, Speck, I missed you, and the dog's talking to him, and he's like, all right, Speck. He's like, all right, Speck. Like the dog is fucking laying into him, and I was like,
What are you, dude?
I've been there, dude. My cat talks to me sometimes, and I was like, totally understood what he was going through.
Yeah.
Yeah. But he ends up, I think finding out that he's got to make his way back. And I think Andy like chases him through like a rodeo at one point, and he gets caught in like a bull riding scenario where you get that great zoom on Andy realizing that that Pee-wee has dressed up as a cowboy and is currently bull riding, and you get that zoom on him. He runs in, not realizing he's wearing red, and just gets absolutely annihilated by the bull. And it's where he wakes up unconscious too, and all the cowboys are around him, and they're like, "What?" One of the great gags in the movie. What's your name? I can't remember. Where are you from? I can't remember. Can you remember anything? I remember the Alamo. And all the cowboys are like, "Yeah!" It's a great moment. But after all of that, he ends up in this biker bar, calling home. And he shushes them all, where he's like, I'm
I love
trying to use the phone, and says it to like all of these just like badass bikers who are gonna fucking,
he's such a
rip
dork.
him apart. And they were like, he's like, nobody hipped me to that dude, that this is like the bar for the Satan's helpers. And they kick him out, and he accidentally knocks over all of their bikes in like a sort of like domino formation outside, and they go, we're gonna fucking kill this guy. And he uses his very last request to do a tabletop platform shoe dance to Tequila, doing the most awkward moves of all time that kind of look like a 9-year-old doing like bodybuilder poses. And at first, all the bikers are like, this is the most ludicrous thing I've ever seen. I don't really understand. And slowly, the sheer power of he wins all of them over. They're like, this is magic. This is the best dancing I've ever seen. The swag on display. It's honestly just like a beautiful moment of Pee-wee winning over all of these badass bikers who previously were talking about stomping on him, tattooing him, hanging him, and then killing him in that order.
Yeah, calling it breakdancing because he just keeps breaking shit is an amazing little gag.
Breakdancing, smash.
Also, one of my favorite gags is, and it's so subtle, but I think it's just brilliant and really funny, is when they're like talking to each other like what they're gonna do. They're like, we should hang him by his feet and beat him up and blah 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 blah. And then he's just like, I say we let him go under his breath. And it just gets me every single time. I don't know why, but it's so funny to me. His delivery's perfect.
It's great. Yeah, that whole sequence is one of my favorites in the movie, and also contains one of my favorite cuts in the entire movie, which is the moment when he's won them all over, and they actually even give him a motorcycle, and they're like, we love you, Pee-wee, like, go on your journey. And the Paul Rubens performance of him getting on that motorcycle, he's so excited, he revs it up, and that brief moment of his face going super serious, like he's about to like do like the Easy Rider shot. Yeah, and the way that shot cuts from him on the bike to the stuntman on the bike in one take, rolling all the way into the sign and just fucking eating it into that like billboard, like 30 feet away from the bar. Didn't even make it that far before crashing. And then the cut to the bikers leading like a funeral parade around an ambulance with Pee-wee in it.
Oh yeah. And then it's like, again, it turns into this whole stylized dream sequence where it turns into something else. You get a different location, and then there's like there's a giant claw that takes his bike and puts it into a boiling cauldron, and there's devils surrounding it. And there, you even get this close-up
clown
of a
doctors
guy
performing surgery.
Yeah, and you get this close-up of a dude that's dressed as a devil, but he's got like a marker drawn-on goatee and mustache, and it's basically like the cheapest-looking, Walmart Halloween costume devil suit that you could possibly find. It reminded me of it was the other one, not If Footmen Tire You, but his other
The Burning Hell.
The Burning Hell, yeah, like when he's got all the
beautiful
Not a
guys
movie
dressed
I
up as
expected to
devils.
bring up on this episode.
Yeah, but his close-up of the devil in hell reminded me of it a lot. So yeah, I thought this was another great.
Yeah, that's that chintzy kitsch factor, I think, where it's like, yeah, like his version of hell, he can't like do a giant set, so it's like, is it also the Francis actor too who's doing the devil? I couldn't
think
remember.
it is. I think it might be. Yeah, that would make sense. I'm pretty sure it is.
But that's just it. Is this whole movie is just a series of ridiculous set pieces, which is why we're describing it this way. And literally, I think in the last like 20 or 30 minutes, it kind of remembers that he's looking for his bike, and when he's in the hospital, he just happens to hear that like some bratty movie star kid has his bike and is like shooting a movie with it, and he's immediately like, okay, well now I have to go to the Warner studio lot and I need to go get my bike back, which kickstarts one of the wackiest chase scenes of the 1980s, where he steals the bike in the middle of shooting this scene. And I gotta say, I didn't look up who the kid actor was, but man, he plays an excellent brat.
Oh, he's so funny. And the switch, the whole gag being that he's just the worst little kid actor to deal with ever. And then he's playing this very Hallmark drama where he's like, "Oh, Lady Nun, I love you so much, and thank you for the bicycle on this wonderful Christmas morning."
I don't even need the bicycle because I have parents now.
yeah, exactly. Oh, man,
Which Pee-wee takes as a sign like, okay, thanks, I'm going to take the bike. I'm going to start a paper route.
Yeah, he just dresses up as a nun and makes his escape.
Now, Will, I have to assume you were super excited about the fact that he crashes through a million different movie sets. There's a beach movie set, there's a Christmas set, there's a Tarzan, there's all these movie sets he goes through. But very briefly, he rips through a Godzilla set.
Let's go.
And if there's one thing Will likes that's not Tim Burton, it's Godzilla. So I was like, look at this is the closest Burton ever got to making it.
Yeah, I was definitely thrilled by that, but I was also thrilled by the fact that there's like a Frankie Avalon style beach party movie being shot at the next lot. There's a real, which is the band? Is it Twisted Sister? Doing
Twisted Sister.
Outside. Yeah. And this is very indicative, or not indicative. It's typical of the Tim Burton style to have all of these completely disparate elements just in the same melting pot.
Mm-hmm. And just and just collapse through the construction of the set piece, because I think one of my favorite details of the whole thing, which separates I think someone who puts the effort into connecting them rather than just making them random, is that a piece of each set goes into the next one, which is like my favorite detail of the entire chase sequence. That like when he crashes through the beach movie set, he grabs a boat with the water skiers, and then when they go through the Christmas one, they pick up Santa Claus who gets into the boat, and then when they rip through the Godzilla one, it's like fucking bikers and dirt bikers like leaping over and like knocking the Ghidorah on wires down and stuff like that. But then Godzilla and Santa Claus are both in a speedboat together, ripping through a Twisted Sister music video, and it's just it's pure imagery. Cartoon mania. It's delightful. It's chaotic, but it's very, very controlled.
Yeah, watching Godzilla and Santa Claus just ripping was one of my favorite images I've seen doing this entire show. And
it's in a Pee Wee Herman movie.
Yeah.
Like, what the hell?
It's the only movie I feel like it would make any damn sense. It's like, how else do you get that image right there?
And you know what? I haven't mentioned it yet, but these images, these beautiful images, these detailed images we've been discussing are courtesy of Victor J. Kemper, too. The guy who shot Husbands for John Cassavetes, Friends of Eddie Coyle, Dog Day Afternoon,
That's
fucking
wild.
Mikey and Nicky, Night of the Juggler. Like one of the absolute greatest of all time for
shit.
70s dirty, sweaty American film look. And here he is in the 1980s doing the most beautiful, elaborate cartoon shit ever.
That's unbelievable. Yeah.
It was more indicative of where his career went when he eventually retired with Jingle All the Way and American Pie Band Camp for the real heads out there.
Band Camp. Oh boy.
A beautiful film.
And this is just where, and I mean, he's already been so many things, but he's an action star in this. He's a hero. He eventually does kind of become a romantic at the end a little bit. But he
becomes James Brolin.
Yeah, he becomes James Brolin. Absolutely, James Bond in a way. Yeah, helps some pets because there's a fire.
I was gonna say that's the real selfless thing that he does, because he's in a full chase through the Warner studio lot, having stolen property, and everyone's going after him. And he sees a pet store on fire, and he doesn't just keep selfishly getting away on his bike. He's like, my bike transports me to things that I do, and one of the things he does is he's gonna go and save all of these pets, various dogs, cats, birds,
snakes,
rats, everything. And you know what? Even despite the fact that he doesn't like them, he saves the snakes at the very last minute.
Him screaming and holding them as he's running out is fantastic. I really did love
beautiful.
That.
It's beautiful.
But yeah, this is great, just because this has this almost, it's just this fun little neat wrap up of just everybody loves Pee-wee, where you meet every single one of his friends in the movie theater, because they make him a hero. They give him a medal and everything like that. They make
not only that, they give him a movie, because the Warner studio loved the star power he displayed crashing through every one of their film sets, and they immediately go, Pee-wee, we want to turn you into a movie. And it's in a beautiful piece of irony it plays at the drive-in. So Dottie gets to finally convince him to take her on a date to the drive-in to watch his own movie. And everyone who loves Pee-wee shows up to the premiere of his movie. The Warner studio head, the homeless man on the train, Mickey having been caught and watching from a jail bus, and Simone with her new French boyfriend, and the biker gang. And I like the detail of the fact that he's dropping them all off concession stand food as well. He's like, here's a chili dog, here's a snow cone, here's French fries. And the bit where he's like, he emphasizes the French fries to Simone, who just came back from France. Yeah, there's a bunch of it's so stupid, but in a fun, very silly and kind of heartwarming way.
Very cute way.
I will say, something I've always liked about movies is when they do the in-universe movie version of the characters, and seeing James Brolin as like a Bond version of Pee-wee, who's like making out with Dottie and like fighting ninjas, and you know, the name's Herman, Pee-wee Herman. Or P.W. Herman, sorry.
And I love the little sign off too, like him doing the, you know, I don't have to see it, Dottie, I lived it. And
that's right.
And it's funny too, because it just builds into his delusion of just how, well, it's funny, you know, by the end of this film, he has convinced me that he's cool as hell, but it's not entirely present on its surface.
He still seems a little asexual, and Dottie I don't think seems like, you know, she's a little bit happy to be, I guess, just spending time with him. Yeah,
and it's funny that he still sees him like if you were to watch that movie, it'd be completely different, obviously, than what we just watched. And so I like that his idea of himself is James Brolin, and he's like, I lived it. I don't need to see that film. I know exactly what happens. It wouldn't be any different.
Yeah, and Paul Rubens and James Brolin just briefly sharing the screen together is beautiful. Thank you, Tim.
Yeah. And to make James Brolin do the ending movie kiss, because they do want to keep Pee-wee still like the kind of asexual or just his innocence or juvenile kind of vibe to him. It's very funny to do that switch as they ride off into the, well, not the sunset, I guess. It's like a silhouette because they're on screen.
Yeah. They ride off into the drive-in movie screen, which is the same thing in this universe.
Exactly.
Yeah. But that's Pee-wee's big adventure. And I think if we're wrapping up here and we're going over into the reductive rating round, this one's very solid, maybe even a high 4 for me. Honestly, I really do just appreciate the absolute cartoon levels of like slapstick, surreal, like Rube Goldberg gag and like pastiche visual construction. Like, I think it's such a perfect translation of what this character is. That speaking of the other, because we mentioned the Dave Care review, it was the Kale review where she described him, I thought, pretty accurately as the Peter Pan of the shopping mall era. It's kind of like what he's doing a little bit. Like, he's got a little bit of that mix of like juvenile and he's kind of joyous, and he's doing silent era physical comedian stuff, but he's also, again, a very, very specifically 80s man child, and the way that he just like throws candy, and the way that his house is a giant like toy house practically. And I don't know, there's something that the way that the movie, both Rubens in his performance and the way that Burton, I think, accentuates visually the fact that he can be playful and sweet, but then he'll just be anarchic and unpredictably vengeful or hilarious in a way you wouldn't expect, and the way that the movie just totally adheres to the cartoon logic of the way that he thinks about his world, and the way that, as Will was saying, like the reality, it just makes sense to you, and that's something that a skilled director actually kind of has to teach you visually, because you can do that and you can break the logic of your world, and you're just like, it doesn't work at all. Here I'm like, every woman falls in love with this man. That makes sense to me. He's just as cool as James Brolin fighting ninjas. I totally buy that is the case here, and I think that's a huge, hugely Rubens and Burton's doing. But also, I think this just has some of the best set pieces. If you want to go on an individual set piece by set piece level, like the fact that he's dressing up in drag to help a fugitive, he's catching rides with claymation ghost truckers, he's telling waitresses to follow their dreams inside giant roadside T-Rex mouths. He's briefly a Texan Alamo cowboy setting bull riding records. He's befriending biker gangs by dancing to tequila and platform shoes. It's just, and eventually doing a really crazy elaborate chase through the Warner Brothers studio lot. And over the course of the movie, we come to love all these weirdos and outcasts that he finds, and he makes his own little community. Everyone helps him get his bite back, and it's just it's a really sweet movie in that way, and with a real display to abandon, I think, anything to do with logic to be like, we could fit another amazing little weird detail in here, or we could fit another great Looney Tune gag in here. And I think movies, I kind of wish movies were still doing that, because it's good for a 90-minute movie. It gives it that energy. Like, this is a completely plotless movie that is still just so well constructed, so anarchic, so inventive, so funny that I don't notice.
Yeah,
I would agree. I would not disagree with anyone who had that critique of the movie, but I literally don't notice while I'm watching it.
Yeah, it's almost why it works. It's like, did you really want a full-on procedural of Pee Wee Herman trying to find his bike? I don't think we do. I want this nonsensical adventure. Yeah. No, I agree. 4 stars for me. I think it's so much fun. It is something that both of these movies actually are movies that I missed in my childhood, and I'm only recently getting to them. So it is interesting to watch them in that perspective. But I think the film having kind of the same logic as the character is why this works so well. It's just it's as messy in the sense of him just going from place to place, gag to gag, but it ultimately works because you're just getting more inside the mind of Pee-wee, and I think that's the whole point. And both these films are strangely edgy and mature for children's films. It seems to me like this was kind of a mixture between there isn't like a more adult version of the Pee-wee show, I think, on the original one that he was doing in HBO, and then they crafted it more towards a children's show. And this one seems to kind of have a mix. I think after the success
of the movie was when he got the kids show off the ground.
Right. And so this movie seems to almost have a mix of that a little bit. I'm not sure how far he went in the HBO special, but because I haven't seen it, but it just seems like there are some moments that are kind of edging towards breaking that threshold that I really do appreciate. And Beetlejuice honestly has the same kind of thing going on in certain moments. But yeah, Ruben's dedication sells it so well. And honestly, it's such a risky character, because I think this character could easily be just incredibly annoying and grating. And somehow he finds this perfect place that does feel juvenile. It does feel kind of like an annoying little kid that's around, but you're in on the joke. It doesn't feel like he's annoying you for whatever reason. I think he's just got such a grasp of how to make that character funny.
You're a kid friend along for the ride.
Yeah, exactly. There's not a moment wasted in this 90 minutes. It's gag after gag, and I love a movie that loves weirdos. So yeah, it's great. 4 out of 5.
Yeah, I mean, to what Jamie was saying about Pee-wee, he's a bit like, well, he's like a child. He's also a bit like my dog in the sense that he's incredibly annoying, but he's so unapologetically himself that you can't not love him. I mean, this is an easy 5 for me. I think it's a perfect movie. It may even be my favorite Burton movie, although, obviously Ed Wood and Batman Returns, I think, make strong cases for themselves. But I don't know. I think this is the perfect melding of two sensibilities. I think every scene is iconic to me, and the world that he creates, the tone that he strikes, really miraculous.
We're going to talk about it next year, but goddamn, if Burton knew anything, the colors, the sets, the animation, all the stuff that we are about to, it's all here as well. Mm-hmm. And I have to say, as a final sort of sending off note, we all disagree with Mr. Siskel, who said Pee-wee is tolerable only in Pee-wee doses.
Well, did you see there was a great there was a great worst of the year Siskel and Ebert episode, like the worst of 1985 or whatever, where Ebert hadn't seen Pee-wee's Big Adventure. I think he was on vacation that week. So Siskel shows the clip where Pee-wee's showing off on his bike and then he falls off and he goes, "I meant to do that." Then it cuts back to them and Ebert's laughing and he says, "I don't know, that looks really funny to me. I think I'm going to watch that."
That's awesome. That's so awesome.
Hell yeah. Siskel just he couldn't deal with that much Pee-wee, but we could.
Loved it.
And we're gonna be wrapping it up there, I think, though, and we're gonna be right back, and we're gonna be talking about Beetlejuice, another movie about an annoying little guy that people don't exactly know how to handle.
This is amazing.
Want a cigarette?
Oh, no, thank you. Oh, yeah, here I come, baby. He's guaranteed to put some life. Attention, keyboard shoppers. In your afterlife. Michael Keaton is Beetlejuice. I'm the ghost with the most, babe.
All right, we are back, and we are talking Beetlejuice, the 1988 horror comedy directed by Tim Burton, written by Michael McDowell, Warren Scarron, and Larry Wilson, and starring Michael Keaton as the titular malicious afterlife spirit and bioexorcist who helps the recently deceased ghost couple, played by Alec Baldwin and Gina Davis, harass and scare the new living family out of their home, played by a crazy cast of Jeffrey Jones, Catherine O'Hara, and Winona Ryder. And there's a couple other
especially Jeffrey Jones, to be clear.
Yeah.
I want to underline the name Jeffrey Jones.
Yeah.
Boo.
Definitely Google that man right now.
You will find
You'll
some
find
things.
lots of really interesting things going on there. Goddamn. What a great way to start. Thank you, Will. Beetlejuice. I mean, I could really.
Thank you for tuning into the Jeffrey Jones Innocence Project. It was Josh's idea. I don't know.
Hold on.
I don't agree
Hold on.
with the premise.
Parody. Stop it. Okay, here we go.
The show
is a great way to
so
start.
well
No-
for so long, and now it's just sold down
no
the
one,
tubes.
no one else would start their Beetlejuice episode that way, so I do kind of appreciate that, because how do you find an angle on Beetlejuice? It is like one of the most kind of beloved horror comedies of not just the 1980s, basically just like ever, I think. It was a massive hit for Tim Burton. Honestly, Pee-wee was a bit of a hit for him. It did like $41 million on its $7 million budget, but you could tell how big it was based on the fact that this went from being directed by Tim Burton to a Tim Burton film. That's the credit in this one. And it was a $15 million budget for this one. And then this one made a bunch of money. And then, his Batman movie, again, he like doubled or tripled his budget and made like $400 million. So it was like this, Tim Burton, very, from 1985 to until basically Batman Returns, the guy could do no wrong. Everything was basically a hit. And Batman Returns still made money. It just wasn't as much money, I think, as the first Batman.
Yeah, that must have been really interesting to watch, because I was born in '92, so I wouldn't have gotten to watch just that, the escalation of films that he's coming out with, but just to see that style get repeated and kind of him establishing like this is my style, this is what my films are going to look like, would be very, very cool. Just given you have Pee-wee, which has the colorful cartoonish element, but then Beetlejuice, which has all of his, the gothic
Beetlejuice was like, that's what I was kind of mentioning when I said that like Dave Kerr was mentioning that he seemed like Burton seemed like a non-factor in Pee-wee. And I think he immediately regretted that when he watched Beetlejuice, because he went, oh no, like this guy actually, this is his thing. But it's more overtly obvious that his personal, I don't know what you would call it, fetishes make their way into Beetlejuice. Like all the things he's really, really, he had the power to morph this to his own sensibility, because I think he was already trying to work on the Batman film at this point, but I guess the script was in development, and he got this script because McDowell and Wilson had worked with him, I think on an episode of Alfred Hitchcock Presents that he had directed, and so that was how he knew these guys, and they gave him the first draft of Beetlejuice, which anyone who has read anything about it, if you go to IMDb trivia, the first thing you will find about Beetlejuice is that it was once a far more graphic, violent, and sexual film in concept, and maybe even a little bit racist, where like Beetlejuice was meant to be like a Middle Eastern who spoke in like AAVE or something. So
I couldn't quite
either
figure
way,
out the motivation for that particular decision, but I'm glad they went a different way.
No, they were like the studio and Burton. I think everyone agreed this was going to be. There's still going to be a little bit of that edge to it that Jamie was referring to. Like the Beetlejuice character is very abrasive and very aggressive, but it is a little bit more in that like family Halloween B movie kind of like spooky factor. It's more deliberately again kind of chintzy and kitschy with the effects. This is the movie where you really get the feel for Burton's love of old gothic horror and like animation and B movies, the way that he plays with artificial colors and and doesn't just do cartoon gags, but actually does it into this like physic breaking surrealism, and the way he uses neon and fog and in this one you could tell the difference, because I literally went from the Dave Care review of the first one to this one where he was like so impressed by this, and the way that he described it was that he took this like funny, like what's funny about the flat world of cartoons, and he found a way to make it gross and horrifying by kind of having it acquire that kind of tangible flesh and blood dimension of like, that doesn't make sense. Your brain goes that's wrong. And I think that really does kind of describe what Burton is doing here, as well as developing just his own stylistic sensibility and some of the future collaborators that he's going to be working with for basically the rest of his career, or for a lot of it anyway. Like production designer Bo Welch is on this, who built all the sets for him, who is the guy who would eventually do Edward Scissorhands and Batman Returns. He would obviously go back to, we didn't mention it somehow during Pee-wee, but he would go back to Danny Elfman for the score on this one. And I mean, he was the one who convinced the Oingo Boingo new wave frontman to like try his hand at movie scores. And man, I mean, obviously Elfman, it's hard to, he's fucking iconic for a reason, but like, man, the like circus ass, like twinkling and honking and shit that he does in this movie, and the weird, like in Pee-wee, he's doing a little bit more of like some more traditional inspirational, like he does. There's a few moments where he's almost like parodying Bernard Herrmann. In this one, he's going just crazy with the strings and the choir. And I think it's the spooky factor is helping Elfman out a lot here to develop his own thing.
Yeah. And it's also established that kind of that almost fun Halloween movie sound that has been, honestly, so many people have copied this specific sounding score throughout Family Channel Halloween movies for decades to come. Like it's bouncy and it's upbeat and it almost feels happy in a sense, but there's still this like spooky undertone that that we're still going to be dealing with witches and zombies and vampires and the like. And I mean that's Danny Elfman's thing to a T. He loves mixing that kind of almost it's like the major key stuff, but there's something a little bit strange underlying it. And it's perfect. And I mean, it's the perfect meld for Tim Burton and him, just because that's Tim Burton as well, just on a visual level, and kind of like the way that he would take on scripts. Like he loved that mesh of comedy and the gothic kind of horror elements as well. So yeah, him and Elfman are perfect.
Yeah. I was watching the Siskel and Ebert review of this, and they're kind of dismissive of this movie. And Ebert refers to it as like a Ghostbusters clone, which I don't think it is at all. I don't even know how you can get that idea of watching this movie. Yeah. But I actually think this movie, even though it wasn't as successful, it was plenty successful. It wasn't like the cultural phenomenon that Ghostbusters was, but I actually think this movie is quite a bit more influential than Ghostbusters. It's not like this was the first horror comedy or anything, but I feel like every comedy with like Halloween-y elements that has come in its wake has been indebted to this movie.
Totally.
From like the Addams Family to like the Rob Zombie Monsters to a movie like Coraline, which is obviously like a Henry Selick movie, but like so many movies are indebted to the particular cocktail that Burton came up with in this.
Yeah, it's interesting that you said Coraline, because I often, and myself included, before I looked up who did it, I always thought that was a Tim Burton movie, and until I looked up who the director was, just because of the style, it just seems so Burton. So yeah.
Oh, Hocus Pocus.
That's the Henry Selick curse.
Oh yeah, Hocus Pocus is definitely a big example of that, and that I think that even has a very similar like Danny Elfman-esque title card or title score and everything like that. So
now, what was your first experience watching Beetlejuice, Will? Was this like a VHS staple?
This was definitely, a movie that I watched on VHS when I was a kid. I definitely saw it a bunch. If this movie, I love this movie, and I don't know if it's my favorite Tim Burton movie, but I do feel like, Jamie, I think you were mentioning how amazing it would have been at the time to like see the progression of Tim Burton's style in this run of movies. And I guess there was some progression, like obviously Batman and Ed Wood are different from this, but I also feel like this is kind of, in some ways, even though it's only his second movie, it's the apex of his style. Like his style came out fully formed in this movie. It's got all the Tim Burton stuff. And I feel like ever since then, it's been like variations on what we see in this movie. And maybe that is to Burton's detriment a little bit. I mean, again, that run of movies to Ed Wood is pretty amazing. But like, I don't know if he necessarily got that much deeper or richer beyond this. I don't know if the ideas in this movie necessarily expanded a great deal after this. But I don't know. I'm saying that with affection for him because like what he did in this movie, I don't know. There are some directors who fairly early in their career have a movie that sort of says everything they have to say and says it in the most perfect way. And I kind of feel that this is that movie for him.
Yeah, I could definitely see that.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I do think that his style did find a way to I do prefer, and I think that there's more happening maybe underneath the surface of the movie in something like Ed Wood, and in something like even Batman Returns a little bit. There's something about the fact that is just like a weirdly psychopathic like carnival freak take on superheroes that is like someone else wouldn't have had that thought with it. And but that also might be just because those were the movies that, like, for Batman Returns, that was the movie that I probably like watched the most on VHS. It was the movie that I was the most in love with, like all the gothic opera elements, all the looming architecture that he does in that. So personally, I get more out of that than I do Beetlejuice, because I find Beetlejuice, I really like it. I do find it, we were talking about this a little bit before we started, like really, really threadbare, like on a character level and on a it is, but in that kind of exciting young filmmaker way where it is like he just really wants to show off his imagination and he really wants to make it as zany and surreal and kooky as like basically he possibly can. And as a result, I actually find him being like, it feels like there was a script here and he just like tore pages out and he was like, no, make it, we're going to the next thing. We're going to cut it down 90 minutes and I'm going to get all of the weird shit that I can possibly fit into this movie, which on one level makes the gag per minute and again, visual per minute ratio like insane. You're always looking at something where you're like, what the hell is that? Whose brain came up with that? But on the other hand, I also watch it and I go, oh yeah, Beetlejuice is in this movie for like 15 minutes. And there's a lot of characters who don't really get developed in this movie. They just kind of react to all of the crazy things that they're seeing, which, fair enough. It's kind of the design of the movie. The idea of a ghost movie from the point of view of ghosts, that's a good enough idea to hang an entire movie on. Go for it.
Yeah. Maybe I need to walk back what I said just slightly, because I do agree with you. I like Batman Returns more than this. And it does, its characters are definitely richer. And it's doing some more interesting things with the Burton style. I think maybe the reason I said that is because like after Ed Wood, I sort of feel like there are so many movies that just come back to the fundamentals of this movie, Beetlejuice, and do it in a way that is like just a tired echo of what this movie does. I'm thinking specifically of
agree.
Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children or frankly Wednesday. Which again, the kids seem to love it. I don't. It just feels like a really kind of like, the Jenna Ortega character in that is just Wednesday Addams, I believe her name is just the Winona Ryder character in this. Like it's not as fresh. The images aren't as surprising. It's not as like this movie has that feeling of like you open a door and the door can lead anywhere. And the Burton movies after that don't, but they do keep returning to the same like rather, I think, shallow thematic grounds of like, oh, it's an outsider, you know?
Yeah. And I totally I get what you're saying though, because it seems to like establish all of those things, and I think that's why it has such significance. Because for me, the trifecta for him, like my top 3 favorites are honestly now Beetlejuice is one of them. I hadn't seen Beetlejuice until today, so that's pretty wild to be honest.
Wow.
Yeah, pretty crazy.
That's crazy.
But it does hold up. Like I thought I wasn't, without the nostalgia, maybe I would just think it's, you know, decent. I would respect the craft and everything, but I had a blast. It's going to be one of my Halloween movies now. But my other 2 are Batman Returns and then Edward Scissorhands. And it feels like all 3 of those are very much the definitive versions of him doing that kind of that outsider going up against everyone that is, you know, the conforming society or whatever it may be. So it's hard for me to say which one I like out of those 3, but those seem to be the definitive versions of that.
Now, do you guys prefer when the outsider, because every single outsider in his movie always has some sort of antagonistic element or characters who aren't, you know, who don't like them for some reason. But there's something interesting to me with you bringing up Edward Scissorhands about Edward Scissorhands is like so sympathetic to Edward, and Beetlejuice is the outsider here, and true. Does this movie make a case that Beetlejuice is a fucking dickhead.
Very true.
A lovable one who you're kind of, but even you are just like, unlike even Pee-wee, you're like, yeah, could Beetlejuice withstand an entire amount of like Pee-wee amount of screen time that he gets?
Yeah,
I don't know. There's something beautiful about the fact that Beetlejuice really does, and Michael Keaton's performance, which is astonishing. It truly is. Like the physical quality of his performance, the insane line deliveries that like nobody else would have thought to possibly let the words come out of their mouth in the way that he does sometimes in this movie.
Yeah.
But that you could not withstand that energy, I think, for longer than the amount of time that he spends here. He's so abrasive, and he's so, and it helps then that the movie designed around him is meant to be sort of an extension of his wackiness that the characters are all reacting to. But this is a movie where like the outsider character is deliberately antagonistic to the fabric of the movie in a way, which is really interesting, and makes it, I think, a bit different than some of his other movies. I mean, I guess you could argue Batman Returns, the villains are sort of just as interesting and, you know, sort of thematically rich as, you know, or more so than the protagonist of the movie as well. But I don't know. There's something about this one in particular where there's so much build up and he doesn't appear for 45 minutes and then he does, and you're like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah. I think there are a couple of different kinds of outsiders in Burton's movies. I mean, there are the ones like Pee Wee Herman and Ed Wood, who are sort of outgoing eccentrics who, you know, collect groups of misfits around them who don't fit into polite society, but who are like kind of social, you know, as outcasts. And then there are ones like Bruce Wayne or Winona Ryder in this movie, or Edward Scissorhands, who are sort of, you know, introverts who keep to themselves. And then there are the ones like the Joker or Beetlejuice who are like chaotic evil, you know? They're misfits because they want to tear society down, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And with this,
it is cool that Michael Keaton got to both be the Joker and then and then
2 years later.
Yeah, you know, and then let Jack Nicholson have a turn 1 year later.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess like with Ryder's character, she's the one that's the outsider that's sympathetic, I suppose. The difference to Beetlejuice, who was just completely abrasive and aggressive. That was one thing me only have seeing this movie one time and just the first time today. I always thought that Michael Keaton was the major star of this film, and just because of the way people talk about him, the way that he's kind of become the iconic face of the film and everything like that. But like you said, it takes him about 45 minutes to get into it, and then even after that,
this is the Jeffrey Jones show. Didn't you hear?
Yeah, Jesus. Yeah, they use him sparingly, and I mean, and as you get to know his character and his character is more on screen, you understand why. Because that was something I said right away was, wow, he's kind of like, he is more annoying than Pee-wee. Honestly, like he's way louder. The way that he just, it's like a nonstop vomit machine of corny jokes that are done. Like, I think it's great in the context of the film. I think Michael Keaton is fantastic. His delivery's awesome. I just, they did sell well that this guy is a nuisance, you know? I thought that was kind of a surprising thing for me. I thought he'd be more
none
lovable.
of the straight characters want like anything to do with him, which is primarily the Alec Baldwin and Gina Davis characters. Alec Baldwin briefly in Young Handsome Heartthrob days, which it's not a thing he got to do a ton. Not at the moment. And
Josh, you were saying off mic that Alec Baldwin is also innocent, right? I think
that's so true, so true. Will, thank you for bringing all of this up during the show. Gina Davis is cool still, right?
Yeah, I think she's fine. I haven't heard anything bad about her.
As far as I know, she's still cool.
That's good. Well, this is a very good post Fly follow up here. They're the almost a cartoonishly sort of like straight couple. Like their whole deal is that their vacation is working on their idyllic like Connecticut home, like just like loving being a yuppie couple, excited to be homeowners and living inside their home and tinkering with it. And they're very, Alec Baldwin is, the local hardware store owner, and he's like a dork who loves like miniature, he's making like a miniature model version of the town. And they end up both dying by trying to swerve out of the way of a dog and crashing into the river. But again, Burton has just found a way to make like this like idyllic, and he does it in Edward Scissorhands too, with all like the sort of perfect suburbia kind of here he does it with this really small town, but this way that it's like going to be disrupted by something, or there's something maybe underneath it. It's not quite like something dark lurking, although you do have that great image of the spider on top of the miniature house that makes it look like a giant spider is on the house, and the way that he films even the miniature, the big like sort of helicopter shots end up looking like this like model town. But when they the thing I really enjoyed about this movie the first time I watched it when I was like younger was the fact that it was one of the first times, because again, someone had done horror comedy before, but it was one of the first times where like there was something weirdly morbid about even just like the construction of gags. And one of the most memorable to me as a child was the fact that very briefly the dog they swerve out of the way from crashing into is like holding up the car by like being on top of like the like wooden plank, and then the dog steps off of it, which is what kills them. And there was part of my brain as a kid that went, dude, that cute dog just kill those people.
Dude, that dog's a murderer. He even has a smile on his face as he's doing it. 100% that little pup knows what he's doing. I laughed so hard when I saw that little detail, because they don't even have to do that. They could have just had them swerve, break through the bridge. They could have
just crashed, but no, like that's the level of effort where like they want to show you this athletic shot of a dog holding up the car.
It is. There is a real dark humor to that. That's also just oddly cute at the same time. Just this cute little devil dog. But yeah, I wrote that down too. I thought that was very funny. But then they have details that are kind of dark and I guess connect more to what the film used to be. Like apparently in the original version of the script, her arm was going to get crushed and they were going to be shown drowned and everything like that. And later on, she does include, there's a piece of dialogue where she says something like, my arm feels frozen. And it's supposed to be connecting to what you're supposed to see, which is her arm getting crushed and everything like that. But obviously they made it a little bit more tame, a little bit more child friendly in a sense. So they didn't go along with it, but there's still that underlying darkness in a lot of it that's very present.
Yeah, well, and I kind of like that they take a little bit of a beat to reveal that they're dead too, though. Like when they walk into the house like all wet, and it kind of takes them a moment to be like, we don't have any reflections, and or they briefly when Alec Baldwin like goes into that one door in the house and he ends up in like this saturated desert like purgatory, which is like they call it, they say that they're on Saturn, and there's like a giant like claymation like dune sandworm that is, you know, like ripping around, which ends up coming back into the finale. But again, talk about as Will was mentioning with Pee-wee, like one of the things Burton was just so good at was just like very quickly, very manically building a world that you just have to go with, because you're like, well, it makes sense to the characters, so I'm gonna, you know, the fact that like these sandworms are just a thing that are out there, and you know, you do get introduced briefly with like, I think there's like an over the shoulder shot of Beetlejuice like reading the newspaper, and he's like, oh, sandworm incidents have increased by 13%. Like, I hate those little buggers or whatever. And you're just like, this is just a facet of what the afterlife is going to look like. And I think my favorite detail of the whole thing, which is in the film on a script level as well, is that the vision of the afterlife is just so tied to a specific type of like, I guess, like American way of thinking. And like the idea that like, you know, there's a handbook for the recently they say the recently diseased, so that just like deceased.
Do you just mean like
there's
a
a running gag
element of it, like almost like in what was that movie we watched with Albert Brooks, where it was very bureaucratic?
Defending Your Life. I was thinking of the same thing. Yeah, where like the afterlife is like this weirdly sort of like a bureaucratic thing where these characters have to navigate it as, you know, first of all, your ghostly reality post-death is kind of based on where you were financially in terms of your real estate success as a citizen.
Right,
and then the other
kind
fact,
of
yeah. And then the other aspect of it is that when they actually require help and they start navigating this very kooky afterlife, it is like they're hanging out in like what looks like a sort of like hospital lobby, and they're navigating it in this, you know, they have to grab a ticket, and they're navigating it almost like the private healthcare system or something.
Yeah. It's basic, and that's the thing. It's like it feels as if like it, especially in the culture of America too. There's the whole idea of heaven, of course, which is Christianity being such a big thing, and with this, it's turning it into a complete limbo, and it makes it feel like a lot of the time, you know, when you think of moving on, you're like moving on to something bigger, even if it's something we can't comprehend. But this feels way worse. This is hell, you know, just waiting in a waiting room. Your ticket is 9 billion and whatever. Like it's just it feels more hellish than just walking into something with like torture or anything like that. It's like, it's this boring. God damn. Yeah. Not to mention, you don't get to have a youthful body. I mean, you know, our two leads get to have it, but everybody else, they actually have the body of whatever they died as. So like one guy is complete roadkill, like got squished by a tank or a truck or something.
That guy's
like that.
Awesome. The makeup effects on that guy are incredible. The fact that you can see the tire treads in his pancake form is amazing.
Oh, it's incredible. And there's so many details. Some guy's got like a shrunken head and he's a soldier. There's
I love that guy too.
Yeah, there's a bunch I have here written down, but it's just the level of detail and how different each person is with their death is great and very funny.
Will, do you have a favorite guy? I'm assuming everyone's got a favorite Beetlejuice guy.
Yeah, it's the shrunken head guy for me, but I also like the guy who officiates the wedding at the end, the little guy with the huge head. He's definitely a strong number two. I hate to keep quoting Roger Ebert because, you know, he wasn't that great a critic, but one of the things that he said about Star Wars that I thought was good was I remember a review where he said that like you go into the cantina scene and the movie works because you see all these aliens and you think all of them have a story that's just off screen. Mm-hmm. And it creates a very convincing world that way. And Beetlejuice does much the same in these scenes with, you know, all these guys in the afterlife who come from all sorts of, you know, all sorts of different walks of life, all sorts of different fates. And you sense that like in the bureaucracy, there are just endless portals, endless doors that this bureaucracy is managing. And actually, I think this is another reason why this movie works so well, because, you know, you open a doorway and you're in the desert with like the worm creatures, like anything can happen, but it's also grounded by this incredibly banal bureaucracy. It's this incredibly insane universe that all comes back to this, that has this harness on it. And I think that's what keeps this more... that's what keeps this grounded in a way. Like, you know, when a filmmaker like Terry Gilliam is at his worst, you know, you sense that there is sort of like no limits on the canvas, but this one has a border on it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And if you go outside that border, the sandworm will kill you from Saturn.
That's right.
It literally has an out of bounds rule in this movie.
Yeah.
Which is kind of funny. And also like the what's crazy too is I mean, we're talking about the details of just the afterlife people and all their kind of dead gags or whatever, but then when they start trying to scare the family that moves in, they start doing some legitimate gore gags, which I thought was, again, I'm just trying to see it as the perspective of watching this as a child. And there are moments where I feel like I would be sneaking this movie from my parents or something like that. And some of those violent images are part of that. I think at a certain point too, Beetlejuice actually says fuck, which I was really shocked by. I did not see that coming at all.
Yeah.
But anyway, but then I started thinking too, it's like if it's associated with Halloween, maybe that's how they get away with a little more, because it does have that very pop and kind of upbeat mood to it. And when you think about Halloween, I mean, you go to a haunted house, for instance, with your kids or your little cousins or whatever, and you're walking through it, there's a ton of super violent imagery. And it's almost like we just go, well, it's Halloween, this is the day that we allow everybody, children included, to look at some morbid things.
I think that's part of it, but I also think it's tone. We've talked about this a lot,
Sure.
but a lot of ratings issues that come up, when something gets like targeted as maybe like more severe than it actually is, or maybe it gets something by that it shouldn't have. It really does come down to, does it feel light in tone or does it feel dark in tone?
Yeah,
and this movie
Beetlejuice
I think manages to always feel weirdly light and weirdly kind of effortless and weirdly kind of, like everything is contributing to this this wacky childish wonder. Even like this is where the juvenile nature is not just Pee-wee. It feels like Burton is kind of like, how can I get my own sort of like infectious, gleeful, manic energy that I just, and just pure imagination on the screen. And whether that's through colors or whether that's through, just crazy production design that makes the entire set look like an optical illusion. And I think when you get people involved in your movie in that way, it makes them a little bit more open to gross texture rather than something like the gross texture of like, I don't know, like a Fulci movie where you're like, okay, well, this is designed to just be unpleasant.
There's also a moment that the movie constantly does wherever it shows something really scary or a legitimate kind of gore gag or something like that, something with more violence implied. It immediately undercuts it by going like, it was just a prank, bro, kind of thing. So it feels more lighthearted in that sense too. It's not just Jason Voorhees cutting the head off of a teenager. There's a joke applied to it. So there's something more forgivable there, I guess. And then this is very
along
funny.
Those lines that.
Sorry, go ahead.
One scene along those lines that leapt out at me was at the end of the movie when the Gina Davis and Alec Baldwin characters are like aging dramatically, like they're getting, their skin is getting wrinkled. And at one point, Alec Baldwin's jaw breaks off, which is a horrifying image. But then Gina Davis like hands him his jaw back. The way that if there's this horrifying image that's undercut by, a little bit of light comedy underneath.
Yeah,
sorry,
and
not
like
afterneath. I just created a new word.
Hell yeah,
but
we
like
do it
a
all the
loving,
time.
like a loving gesture kind of thing after they do something like that. Yeah, I think a similar thing happens where her hand gets crushed as well, and then there's something else that kind of cushions it a little bit. One that is not a cushion, I will say though, is when they open the door to see the hanging. She's decapitated Alec Baldwin, and then the legitimate jump scare of Jeffrey Jones coming out of fucking nowhere, and you're like, holy shit, that was terrifying. But yeah, other than that,
I mean, yeah, whenever Jeffrey Jones shows up anywhere, there's a jump scare, isn't there?
Exactly.
Yeah, you're like, oh, Jeffrey Jones.
Yeah, they knew. They made Jeffrey Jones the jump scare.
Yeah, well, because he's obviously the sort of like he's the head of this New York Dietz family that's moving in. He's Charles. He's kind of, I mean, sort of, speaking of Albert Brooks again, he's kind of in like the Charles Grodin role in like real life a little bit, where he's just like, you know, he's a you know, a bit of a city guy who's got this opportunity to move into like this big house. He's a real estate guy, and he's just super excited to be perfectly at ease in this country setting. But you have his wife Delia, played by Home Alone and After Hours as Catherine O'Hara, and their daughter Lydia, played by Winona Ryder, who obviously went on to be, you know, one of the queens of the 90s with Heathers and Edward Scissorhands and Dracula, which we've talked about. But I really like the Catherine O'Hara character and the kind of chaotic energy that she brings to it too. She's very this domineering like artist and sculptor who wants to turn the house into this like ugly postmodern eyesore with the help of her interior designer Otho, played by Glenn Shadix. Oh God, what is his name? I think I even wrote it wrong.
I think so.
But, you know, and the way that those characters, once again, are, you know, they're annoying in a way, and they make that's what sort of makes the Alec Baldwin and Gina Davis character be like, well, we need to get these people out of here, which they first try to handle kind of like on their own, which is where they're doing all these scenes where they're pretending to just be ghosts. And there's a lot of great gags where they're just like, they try and fail at being scary ghosts because they just, you know, they're just not very good at it, and they're not very creative at being frightening. They're just like walking around with sheets going like, ooh. And meanwhile, like the goth witch daughter is like, my whole world is a dark room. And you guys are you guys are cool. I like ghosts. I like that my house is haunted. Like, this is awesome. I want to be dead. Yeah. They do spend a good portion of the movie. Apparently they had to do a rewrite of the movie at one point because they realized that they thought implicitly the message was going to be that they were pro teenagers killing themselves. So there was a little bit of a rewrite that needed to be done. Yeah. You know, people, it was sort of like when people got really depressed that like Avatar wasn't real, but they were like the Beetlejuice afterlife isn't real. It's fucked up. But it's the introduction of Michael Keaton that, you know, like really does take the movie to like a different level when they at first find his business card, but then they find his corny TV ad that he does, and you get an idea of what like his deal is, but there's a distance because he's trapped in the TV, and he's doing that like really funny like physical routine of like a low rent like car salesman. Yeah. But he's, you know, being like, I'm the afterlife's leading bio exorcist. Are you having trouble with the living? You know, come on down and I'll scare them. You know, I'll even possess myself. I got demons running all through me. And he has a great line too. Where he's like, I'll eat anything you want me to eat. I'll swallow anything you want me to swallow. But come on down. I'll chew on a dog. And it's just nonsense. But Michael Keaton is, you know, he does really, really sell it. And eventually they do go, okay, we need this guy's help because we cannot get this family to leave. There's nothing that's working here. And they summon him into his own, you know, into the model. So they make him a little miniature, and which leads to a ton of amazing, like sort of like perspective shooting that they do and some effect shooting that they do. And he really gets to just be absolutely insane. The disgusting like rotten corpse makeup, the fact that he has like mold chunks on his face and like his hair looks like he just went through like the electric chair or something, and how just overtly within seconds of being on screen how like crude he is, the way that he's doing like jerk off motions, or like the way that there'll be like honking sounds when he grabs his dick, which I'm like, why, how is this in a PG movie?
That's what I was saying. I just, as soon as he came on screen, especially like before, I was thinking, okay, like I said, it's a Halloween film, so you can kind of get away with some of the violence as long as there's gags wrapped around it. But then when he just starts grabbing, the kind of
sexual element stayed in there, though. The way that he's like touching and grabbing like Gina Davis and stuff like that too. It's just like, right. You're like, you know, are they going to leave that in Beetlejuice? I don't know. Let's find out.
That's the thing. I feel like. What's strange about this is that I never heard about any of this kind of tone from the movie at all. Through all these years, people talking about it with nostalgia glasses on and everything like that, I didn't get any hint that it was this crude once Beetlejuice actually comes out. And so I feel like especially just given that it doesn't feel like this generation of films has had a lot of that kind of crudeness. I feel like they're going to get rid of it, and they're going to have the nostalgia glasses on for the new one. I hope I'm wrong, but it feels like they're going to be a little more tamer in that regard. They might, I think all the horror imagery will be there. I just don't think he's going to be as much of a pervert straight up. At a certain
I
point,
think you're
this dude's
sadly
distracted.
right.
Yeah. And
they're ruining our heroes.
God damn it. And like at a certain point, this dude is literally distracted from the plot that he's supposed to be doing because of a brothel. You know what I mean? So I just don't think that that's going to be involved in the new one. I hope I'm wrong, but yeah, hard to say.
So in other words, you're saying that you're worried that Beetlejuice has gone woke. You're worried that Beetlejuice is doing critical race theory and gender studies.
That's right. Yes. Yep. Ryder's just going to be going on and on about it. Yep. It's
no more hawking loogies into his jacket and saving that guy for later. None of this.
Not my Beetlejuice. This is not my Beetlejuice.
Yeah.
What did you guys think of the fact that I was mesmerized by the 5 seconds of whatever Michael Keaton's doing with his gut and his ass sticking out while he's running around during that scene? I was like, is it you got something in there? I don't know what was going on. I was like, every time I've watched this, I forget about this brief moment.
So that rocks. I don't have a comment on it besides saying that rocks. My main comment on Michael Keaton's performance is that moment when they ask him about his qualifications, and then he starts talking in his normal Michael Keaton voice, well, I went to Juilliard and I did this. That's a brilliant. Yeah, I mean that's indicative of the brilliance of this performance, that he would do a touch like that.
Yeah, and then the escalation of when he says the Exorcist
line. That's my favorite part.
Yeah, I mean, it's brilliant. And
every time the fact that mid sentence he just starts screaming about how he's watched The Exorcist 167 times, and it keeps getting funnier every single time I see it.
And the rhythm of him doing it, the way that he gets grittier with his voice, the yelling starts again, his kind of abrasive attitude starts again. It's such a good escalation of delivery. I think it's amazing. And just the general thought, the gag of him thinking The Exorcist is a comedy. It's just fun and funny. Love that. So yeah, and I love the miniature work in this before they get him out of the grave, and they're digging things up, and it's all made out of craft supplies and materials. So they're actually digging up giant pieces of cardboard and painted pieces of construction paper and stuff like that. So because they're in the miniature town.
It led to that great improvised line where he kicks over that tree and goes, "Nice fucking model," because it was actually just a shitty bit of production design.
Yeah, that's where he says the fuck, and I was shocked by it. I was like, damn, Beetlejuice is pulling out all the stops here.
Yeah. You mentioned that, Beetlejuice, I think he only has something like 17 minutes of screen time in the movie, which I think is good.
I agree.
Obviously,
yes.
I'd like more of him. Yeah, I'd like more of him, just in the same way that I'd also like more candy. But sometimes too much candy can give you a stomach ache, and I think he's deployed perfectly in this movie.
Mm-hmm. I agree. That's another thing I'd be curious about with the new sequel, is if he's going to be more of the focus, because it is smart to use him as more of a very significant side character, or almost I guess an antagonist in a way, this strange side antagonist or something like that. He's kind of just a chaotic character. But I am curious if they're
chaotic neutral.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. But I am curious if they're going to make him the focus in this new one. Again, thinking that's just what people remember from this movie. It's hard to say, but yeah, I'm glad that he's only in it for the 20 minutes that he is. I think it's perfectly utilized.
Yeah, it would be hard to just sustain that energy.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
It doesn't it doesn't make sense in large bursts. I like that it does have downtime where it just does explore the world, when they're just experiencing the wonder of drawing, the chalk door and how it glows green, and then they go into the waiting room and they're meeting all of these various characters, and again it the way that you imply this this larger sense of, maybe there's other Beetlejuices out there. Maybe there's other guys who are like anti-Beetlejuices. I don't know. Like you're sitting there being like, I do see, like where Burton was like, I do need to have limits. I do need to have rules on this universe, or else you are just going to give it entirely over to Beetlejuice. But at the same time, I was kind of praising Pee-wee for the fact that Pee-wee is in so much of it in the movie. The movie bows to him in a way. Yeah. And I do wonder what a version of this movie where it bows to Beetlejuice and he just like takes full command of the movie. But
that could
I don't
be
know.
Interesting.
That
you just have to have like such a grasp of how much you're almost breaking that threshold, like it's just, you'd have such a control. It's possible.
It does walk the line really, really well here. And I like the fact that we do get to see other glimpses of it. Like I like the skeleton typewriters. I like the brief digression into like the receptionist who like slit her wrists, and they bring up that whole thing to her. You know what they say about people who commit suicide in the afterlife, they become civil servants, which is such a cruel joke. But like it ends up occurring with that character. I do like the brief appearance of Sylvia Sidney as well as their caseworker Juno. There's a great bit where she's smoking, and literally the smoke comes out of like her slashed throat, which is something that you feel is like pretty graphic for like a PG movie, but it's a joke. Right. So yeah, you're just like, again, tonally, you're like that's totally okay. That totally fits. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I like that when we're not spending time with Beetlejuice, this is the thing that it's spending its time on. I think I would feel differently maybe if the downtime between Beetlejuice was not as visually interesting and not as again, he's so interested in the entire design of everything that's come up with here, and he really just did let the production designers and the makeup effects artists and the creature effects art and everyone just go like hog wild.
Yeah, and I mean, even some of the family stuff is kind of interesting. Like the two shots that he has that are back to back. That's kind of cool. Is when they're outside on the deck, and it looks like there's an actual wall with a window frame. And because they're doing this like postmodern weird house where nothing makes sense, they have a detached wall that looks like the inside of a house, but it's on the outside and it's not attached to anything. There's just like these interesting visual stuff that they do. When they're moving into the home, all of her sculptures are nearly killing everybody because the cranes can't handle them and how big they are. So like I thought that those were really good gags and still built into the style of what this movie's doing. So yeah, everything in between the Beetlejuice stuff is honestly fantastic. Really, really great gags and tons of visual flair.
Yeah, and there is a little bit of sweetness to the like Alec Baldwin, Gina Davis, like Winona Ryder stuff that's happening, where she's like the one person who can see them because she's seen Night of the Living Dead, and she's what is it? Live people ignore the strange and unusual, but she herself is strange and unusual. That's she's a weirdo. Yeah, she's cool.
Yeah, exactly.
And
I love, and she's wearing like a black veil, whether she's eating dinner or just chilling in her room or whatever. Like the fits for Winona Ryder are full goth. Fantastic.
There is a generation of women who Winona Ryder in this movie is like their entire worldview.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you know what? Fair enough. Sometimes there's a generation of guys who it's Beetlejuice, probably. So, and those are scary guys. You don't want to know those guys.
Fight Club. Yeah, Fight Club.
Yeah.
And for you guys, I think you were saying off mic, it's Jeffrey Jones. I mean, again,
hold on.
Is that a misquote? I don't know.
Yeah, there's a little bit,
Saboteur.
It's okay. It's fine. So do you guys like the music of Harry Belafonte?
Oh, sure.
Yes, fantastic.
You know who I love is Dick Cavett, Hollywood's Dick Cavett, showing up in the iconic Deo scene. And I love
where
that,
he gets to get beaten by some shrimp.
In these first two movies, we've had appearances by Milton Berle, James Brolin, Dick Cavett, and Robert Goulet. I mean, Tim Burton's stunt casting is already just off the charts.
Absolutely, yeah.
He was I mean, hey, a lot of these kids were getting to see some Hollywood legends they wouldn't have seen. Again, Edward Scissorhands was the first time I ever saw Vincent Price, and now, you know, he's one of my guys. I love that guy.
Yep. It's a great use of him in that movie. But I love
I do think that the dance sequence in this is kind of like, you know, one of the things that's made it. It's actually probably the thing more people talk about the movie than anything else, which is why a lot of people have the impression that it's like the tone is like more Matilda than what it actually kind of is.
Yeah, because that's the thing. When I was watching this scene, I had that exact thing you said. I just felt like this is kind of what people have been talking to me about this whole time. It's like, oh, that's such a cute, fun Halloween movie for the whole family. And I was like, this is the scene they're referring to for sure. Because it's just like, you know, they're singing, what's the song called? I know.
Day-o.
Yeah. They come and they want to go home, but I can't remember what it's called. Maybe Daylight. I have no idea. But anyway,
it's called Day-o. It's called Day-o.
Okay.
That's right.
Oh, okay. But it you know,
I was giving it to him. He didn't pick up.
It's not a Halloween song by any means, and so it
is now. What do you mean?
Yeah, it is now. Yeah, definitively. Yeah, but it's interesting that that's what they choose. Like Beetlejuice, out of all the songs, that's what they sing to, and it's so upbeat compared to like kind of the gothic imagery they have around them, like with the candles and just the weird abstract furniture they have in the room and everything.
Michael Keaton turning into a crazy animatronic snake.
Yeah. Yes. Holy shit. Yeah. Which is cool too, because they start to form the environment. Like as they're walking around, they're feeling the banister, and then it turns into the snake that turns into Michael Keaton.
Oh my God. Yeah. All the compositing and like sort of like perspective work and like effects work is, you know, it's interesting because I know that Burton, you know, claims that they wanted it to be like they wanted it to be kind of like noticeably, I don't know, not bad, but like kind of like just like more lo-fi. It's not like necessarily state of the art, like deliberately. Mm-hmm. But man, is it just so charming and does it look so good? And I hope to honestly, if this is the only thing he manages to revive in a new Beetlejuice movie, is that he goes back to doing effects this way and drops some of the, you know, digital tools in favor of it. That would be all I need out of a new Beetlejuice movie. That's the only thing you need to be true to, in my opinion. I need the production design and I need these like effects of, I want little grossly textured puppet dudes doing weird shit.
Yeah.
That's all I would need.
And even the effect of having actual guys, I'm assuming with like these monster hands, makeup or gloves or whatever, coming out of the bowls for them and grabbing their faces and pulling them in. Like it's just, I just love the, you know, it's the tangibility of it all. That's what makes those practical effects so amazing. So, and feel so amazing. You just know when you're watching something fake. We've said it countless times on this show. So don't need to hammer it too much,
but that's just it. Is I think in this you are deliberately watching something fake, but you're watching something where you appreciate the artistry and the construction of that hilariously, charmingly fake thing.
Yeah,
like when they do their crazy makeup, where they like use their faces become like silly putty, and they turn themselves into these weird like pterodactyl shaped heads.
Oh yeah,
it's like body horror. Their eyes are popping out of their fingers, and you know Gina Davis has like a giant tongue sticking out, and they're being like, yeah, now we look really scary. You know, we can be Beetlejuice. We can scare the crap out of this family.
But then they're still having like the next scene after they transform their faces to do that. They have kind of like a sentimental conversation, I believe. I think they're
talking to each other in the crazy body horror makeup, being like, this is mean. We like the little girl.
Yeah, and just like they look like so grotesque. It's very funny. He balances that so well.
Yeah. No, it is one of those just like miracles of tone. Mm-hmm. I think that, you know, some people do kind of undervalue.
And building the like all the, you know, they're trying to make it so that this is almost a horror movie. It's like a comedy that a horror is trying to break through, and that's kind of like the plot as well, where they're trying to scare the family out of the house. And so it's also a built-in gag when they figure out that all of these the house is legitimately haunted, and they're like, fuck that, let's just commodify this shit. Let's make some money. They're not scared at all. They instantly want to work with the ghosts. There's no tense scene where they're figuring it out. They're just like, oh, okay. Hell yeah. We can use this to our advantage.
Yeah, well, these are the greedy characters. They want
That's
to turn
right.
it into a tourist destination. You know, they're all about equity and investment, and and that's not that's not what this house was lovingly crafted by the two owners for. This was a place that they loved. This was their whole life. This was their personality. And that's not what home. At one point too, actually, I think the one real estate woman comes up and is like, "This is a pretty big house for two people."
Yeah.
Maybe you should sell it to like a family who would take advantage of it. But this family was harming it.
Yeah.
And that's why they need to get run out of town, almost Western style. But in this case, by Beetlejuice, who gets summoned to, at a certain point, just go absolutely fucking nuts on them.
Yeah.
Basically right after he gets his like Showtime line, and he just goes like full circus mode. The iconic like black and white pinstripe suit, his arms turning into fucking hammers that are like launching the business couples into the ceiling and shit like that.
Oh yeah, it's fantastic. And I also did like the gag right before that with when they are distracting with the strip club. And it was funny that Gina Davis for a second thinks that Alec Baldwin's character actually built that.
Oh yeah, why'd you build that in there?
He's like, I didn't. Like, I swear to God, I didn't build that. I just thought that thought was very funny. It's a very quick gag. I thought it was great.
Yeah,
but,
I mean that whole scene is fantastic. Like that whole scene when he's being super creepy. First of all, that's the one where he's just like, I need to marry Edgar Allan Poe's daughter over there because
who's a teenager, by the way.
Yeah, he's like, I've been in here for 600 years. That's how I'm going to get out of here, And then, but the way that Gina Davis like grabs him is like, you stay away from like that girl. And then he just like grows spikes, which obviously pricks her hand and she throws him. But just the fact like the miniature effects of a tiny Michael Keaton just being fucking like thrown into a dollhouse and then immediately going down and just jimmying his way over to like the prostitution house. Yeah. He's like the little dance he's doing and everything. And the way that the camera slowly pans to reveal it. Oh man, it's so good.
That was also a detail I didn't know about because no one has mentioned it whatsoever, is that Beetlejuice tries to marry a teenager. I was like, oh yeah, that's part of the plot too. I bet they'll take that out of the sequel. I'm gonna bet money on that one as well. It was like, holy shit, Beetlejuice is not this lovable character that I thought he was for all these years. For decades, I thought he was like just more playful, kind of like Pee-wee, right? And he's not. He's a little bit malicious.
Beetlejuice would have, like, in today's day and age, Beetlejuice should have like a canceled comedy tour.
Yeah,
probably.
Exactly. Yeah, that would kind of be funny if for some reason they got in trouble for that, where they were like, oh, but this character's problematic. If he went on an actual apology tour dressed up as Beetlejuice, I'm like, that might have been null it.
That's what they'll do with them.
Yeah, exactly. But, if anyone, digs it up.
But no, the movie has no interest. This is what I mean, though. The movie really does have no interest in exploring anything that it's maybe on the edges thematically bringing up. It really just is meant to be like a oddball machine. And it is trying to power through all of, like, by the time it hits like this final set piece area, it is just like your brain actually can't keep up with some of the imagery that he's throwing at you.
Oh, it happens so fast.
Starting with the entire sort of like seance with the wedding clothes that turns into like this accidental exorcism where you do get Gina Davis and Alec Baldwin just like, being slowly, there's a cool effect where they're slowly like rising and filling out their clothes, and then they start aging and they start turning into these like neon green mummies, and that's where Winona Ryder has to summon him to kind of like help them out. But obviously he's not really interested in helping them as much as he is in marrying a teenager to escape the afterlife. And the level of chaos that he just unleashes, where he's like tying up the mom and dad and he's throwing his dowry of fucking like snakes in their hands. Tim Burton had a snake thing. Yeah. Lots of characters holding snakes in their hands. And in this case, though, I think Burton's like just love of animation just totally takes over the movie. Mm-hmm. Like the like literally with the stop motion sculptures coming to life and starting to attack people. The
covering Barbara's
alien looking wedding officiator that Will was talking about earlier, but just like even how he edits or constructs, it's like Alec Baldwin is trying to say Beetlejuice so that they can, say his name and transport him back into the model set. But Beetlejuice fucking knocks his teeth out and it turns into like the fucking like gag chattering teeth on the ground.
Yeah.
Or when he tries to shut Gina Davis up and he throws like a baseball strike at her mouth and it literally turns her mouth into like, it goes from like a zipper mouth to like a steel cover. And, again, like this is just stuff that makes no sense outside of like a cartoon or like a comic book page. But the tangibility of how it's been realized and how it's been cut together really is just like incredibly effective.
Yeah. And I guess I love his kind of like crude humor again, where it's like that. It has a guy that's been divorced 3 times kind of humor vibe to it sometimes, where like the thing where he takes off the bone finger and he takes off the ring and he's just like, she meant nothing to me, I swear, and then throws it away as he's about to put it on Ryder's finger. Just things like that kind of reminded me of almost that what was the Dead Heat with Joe Piscopo.
Piscopo. Yes, Mr.
Yeah.
Joe Piscopo.
God, the god of comedy right there.
Yeah, he's got like that my wife kind of humor, you know what I mean? And so I really dug that when he was digging into that in this scene too. But yeah, the effects are great. And I would argue even, and I think it was our buddy Kai Perignog, he actually doesn't like the movie. I think this is a fantastic movie, but I do kind of agree that because there isn't a lot of focus on Beetlejuice, this quick change to him being like the antagonist for this finale feels a little undercooked in some regard. And because
I think he's an antagonist from frame 1. So I kind of,
but it's like, it's not, I don't know, because he doesn't have a lot of screen time, and they spend a lot more time just going like, don't release him. He doesn't feel like the true antagonist. So to finalize him as that, it felt just a little bit, I don't know, quick and underdeveloped in that sense. I understand that his character has been developed enough that he would be a nuisance and he would try to get out and he would do these things. So he's going to become kind of the central problem at a certain point. But they just spend a lot of time talking about him rather than him showing up, which again, I like. I think that it's a good use of him. It's just that to throw him into this I found it to be a very fast finale. And again, it's gag for gag for gag. So I don't care. I'm having a great time. I just found like, oh, okay, we got rid of Beetlejuice. It felt quick to me, I guess. But
yeah, no, I get what you mean. But I think that's just a larger thing about they haven't developed the characters in this movie like very much at all.
True.
Like in general,
that's true.
It really just is a visual gag machine at a certain point, and it is like. Is Beetlejuice pulling cockroaches out of his pocket? Look at that. That's gross. Or Alec Baldwin is like driving a toy truck. That's crazy. That's weird. And it looks really cool. And then Gina Davis straight up rides the sandworm like she's in Dune.
Yeah.
Which is actually like a very like the way that she crashes through that ceiling and riding it and straight up eating Beetlejuice. And also the fact that Beetlejuice does get eaten. That's, I think, an important aspect of this, the way that he was threatening to swallow everything earlier in the movie. But yeah, it is an incredibly quick wrap up. And then they're like, yeah, the two couples now bond over, I guess, like saving each other. And now they're both
like
sort of
parents.
like parents to Lydia.
Yeah.
And the living in the dead home are kind of in harmony. And you feel like there's more that they probably could have milked out of that, especially in like the sort of the domestic drama angle of it. But I do wonder if like that's as a 90-minute breathless incredible looking movie, or if that has a lot more downtime that we would be annoyed about. I don't know.
It's hard to say. Like, I don't think it's any of this added stuff they could have done is necessary. I think it just would have brought a little bit more to the characters themselves. But because there's so many great gags, and I don't think that these characters are like underdeveloped. I just think that there could be more to them. There's not a lot of nuance to them. There is a part in the beginning where they're talking to that real estate agent and she says the family line, but she almost says it like it's almost like it implies that they can't have a family or they've been struggling to have a family. And so I think that that's also tying into this ending where it's like now they kind of have a daughter. It's like they're like ghost parents to this gothic child that feels very disconnected to her family.
Yeah.
And it's, but
they're
again, that's
gonna
very
let her do like floating possession dances if she
Yeah.
gets good scores on her paper.
Yeah, exactly. And again, that isn't really focused on or anything like that. It's just all very subtle and kind of like a one line thing that's set up. But yeah, that I guess that's really the most they do with like kind of the character development. It feels surface level, but it's all very entertaining.
Yeah. Part of me is like that definitely like if, you know, because that's basically the end of Beetlejuice if we're pivoting towards reductive rating round, which I kind of want to tie this kind of statement into. Like, I think what you're describing is exactly why the movie is kind of light for me and why like it doesn't reach top tier Burton for me. And I do like, I like it a lot. It's like, you know, it's just, that's the reason I find more interest and depth in even something that like, you know, Batman Returns is a kid's movie too, but I find there's more depth happening with the characters. And I find that there's more, you know, he's actually exploring things there. And I think the same thing's happening in Ed Wood. To an extent, I think some of that's even happening a little bit in Edward Scissorhands as well. Like, I think he's actually addressing the kind of like the you know, the outsider social, you know, aspect of what he's getting at thematically is like a little bit more developed in that movie. So like, that's why Beetlejuice for me has always just been a very, you know, surface affair. But I have a hard time arguing that it's like not one of the craziest, most beautiful surfaces anyone came up with.
Yeah.
Like, and I enjoy every second of looking at it and like living in it. And so I don't know, like that's kind of where this movie lands for me. So that's why it like kind of, it's just in the solid 4 territory. I think for a lot of people, this is kind of a classic. This might even be like one of their 5-star Burton movies. And it doesn't quite get there for me, but I totally get it and why it does. Like, again, there's so much energy, there's so much imagination, there's so much, like, this movie is so clearly an excuse for just Burton as like a guy to like a proving ground film almost. He's like, every manic image I ever storyboarded while I wasn't doing my actual job at Disney is like, I've been given $15 million to do it. And I have found these guys' script that has like a cool idea of like a ghost movie from the point of view of ghosts. It gives me an opportunity to get really unhinged, and I'm going to do it. But it does feel like, and I don't know if the original draft would have been better. It sounds like it might have even been grosser in a way where you would have to address some of these things a little bit more in depth. But I do feel like there was probably like part of him cutting it out was also, I can just make this, again, like Pee-wee, I can turn it into a set piece device, and I can focus on my production design. I can focus on my colors. I can focus on my textures, and I can just really gleefully indulge in all of the spooky B-horror images I've ever wanted to put on the screen. And that results in a really incredible and incredibly fast-paced experience to watch this movie. And yeah, it's part of what I enjoy about it. Like, all of the absurdity is there, all of the crudeness is there, all of Keaton's strange and ridiculous deliveries and physical comedy, and the fact that he basically just is this annoying, sexually aggressive, like, stand-up comedian demon who's also like a lovable weirdo pervert that like nobody wants to hang out with, but at the same time every second he's on screen is like electric. And that's kind of like the line that the entire movie just walks. So I don't know. Part of me goes, there's something that could have been developed further for this to be a better movie, but being exactly what it is exactly why it's as playful and beautiful as it is. And yeah, I just, that's, you know, it's the sort of the contradiction of the movie in a way. But yeah, love the colors, love the sets, love the Keaton performance. And if Burton can even pull 40%, if he can even just the tiny bit of juice just makes its way where it was like, do you know what, it's a little bit tangible. You know, it's a little bit more sort of like charmingly kitschy in its sort of like silly, spooky visual imagination. Bring it back, man. Bring it back. I miss it so much.
Yes, agreed. Yeah, I'm also going to give it a 4. This is the first time I've seen Beetlejuice, strangely enough, but it's fantastic. I didn't need any nostalgia goggles or anything like that. I thought it was amazing. I think gag after gag is funny. This is it's necessary for understanding Burton's style and his sentiments and everything. I mean, this just feels like we were saying with Pee-wee, it's one of those things where people couldn't quite see what he was doing until he established it the second time around, and this time it has everything he wanted to have with the kind of the gothic imagery and everything built into Halloween and everything like that, because that does feel like his kind of his vibe and everything. I mean, after this, turning Batman into, not that the comics weren't dark before, but having that added kind of gothic style and a little bit of he has a cartoonish quality to him that I think was very different for Batman, but still ends up working. And it's just interesting to see it be established here. So it was cool to finally see it. I was not expecting the more PG-13 adult kind of quality of it. I really thought this was going to be a straightforward kids movie, but it is kind of almost at the threshold of it. And I always love watching that. It feels like anytime we bring on a kids film or a Halloween movie in that regard, it has that kind of balancing act that it's doing. And it's always very interesting to me to see what people can get away with. It feels, just because they don't do a lot of deep character work, it almost feels kind of like a haunted house, but it's not quite as shallow or anything like that. It just feels like the movie is built to, make you laugh and kind of embrace the oddities that tickle your fancy. Keaton, great delivery. It's just unbelievable escalation of the use of his voice, his like the grit in his voice, but then going back to normal and just playing with different kind of characters in a way, because Beetlejuice doesn't seem to have like his motivation is just purely one, to escape, but it's all just him and using people for his advantage. So he'll kind of just go every which way in order to do that, and it's very interesting to watch. Also interesting to watch Baldwin play a likable character. That is very fascinating to watch. And the amazing sets, they are truly incredible. And I love when they go into the miniature town and you can actually see like the giant pieces of cardboard that they're using and all of that. So yeah, great stuff. 4 out of 5.
For me, another easy 5, and perhaps this is the nostalgia goggles. I don't know. Perhaps it's the nostalgia goggles, but I also think that just as a delivery system for delightful images, this movie is practically unmatched. For all the reasons that you gentlemen said, I think you were both pretty comprehensive. I would just add that.
People are liking Beetlejuice. Can you believe it?
Yep. I hope
we are
like
the first
the next
ones.
One.
The juice is loose.
That did get me, I'll be honest, in the trailer. It's like probably the one part of the trailer where I was like, okay, maybe there's going to be a little bit of
there could be some juice here.
a little bit of that adult humor has made its way back in. I don't know. Let's see. But that's going to wrap it up, I think, for this week's episode and our look back at the early Tim Burton. Once again, that was Pee-wee's Big Adventure from 1985 and Beetlejuice from 1988. Thanks so much, Will, for joining us and lending us your Tim Burton nostalgia. And I hope you, Will, can I ask how many times you have seen these films? Do you know this? You've kept a record, I'm sure.
No, I have not kept a record, but what? I don't know,
dude. You have like you have like all your cards or your ticket stubs and everything.
I do have I have ticket stubs for a couple of years when I was in high school, but VHS viewings of stuff when I was a kid. There's no record of that. No. I mean, Batman, I've probably seen 30 times. I don't even want to put a number on how many times I've seen Batman. Probably more than that. In fact, during the break, I just bought a ticket to see it on 35 at the Review Cinema next month.
Me too. So, I'll be there.
Yeah. And that saves us both having to go to the Kingsway. So that's a lot of fun.
Boy, that's true. Will's bringing up all the off-air stuff today. He was like, I'm going to get a little, he's our personal little Beetlejuice right now.
Yeah.
The juice is loose. What can I say?
Chaos machine. Yeah. Well, Will, thanks for joining us. What's going on in the world of your podcast? I'm sure a lot of our listeners are already over there checking it out, but what do you guys got coming up that people can look forward to?
Well, on the Important Cinema Club, we just did an episode on one that I'm sure everyone's been requesting, Harry Langdon, the forgotten silent comedian. Did a deep dive into Harry Langdon. I'm sure people have been beating down your door as well. We want Harry Langdon. We need Harry Langdon. Well, our podcast was brave enough to answer the call.
They delivered. I'm sorry. Our Discord has a weird obsession with Robert Langdon. So I thought that's who you were talking about, who is the main character of the Da Vinci Code series of books and movies.
No. Hey, I'm sure at some point we'll get to those movies too, because we are honor bound to hit every beat of film history. So sooner or later we'll do the Ron Howard triple feature on that.
There you go. Awesome. Yeah. Well, for our listeners, we are going to be back in 1 week's time where we are going to be over on the bonus feed. As Jamie alluded to earlier in the show, we are going to be going Barbara Stanwyck mode because it's been a little while since we've talked about her. And I had a double feature lined up where we could kind of get two different eras of her career. We're going to talk about one of her pre-code movies called Babyface.
Cool.
And then we're going to talk about one of her sort of like later period movies that I think is like just absolutely incredible. And speaking of a like sort of like beautifully shot movie, we're going to be talking about Samuel Fuller's 40 Guns.
Ooh.
Both movies where every man on screen is completely destabilized by the fact that Barbara Stanwyck is in the movie. Is sense. Kind of the uniting theme of the movie. She is kind of a dominatrix force in both movies.
I'm going to emphasize with all of
two
those
fantastic movies.
Hell yeah.
I love both those movies. Yeah.
Awesome.
Hell yeah. I got the Will seal of approval for next week's Patreon episode for anyone who's interested. And then in 2 weeks' time, I don't know that we've mentioned it on the main feed yet, but Jamie and I both got approved for press badges for the Toronto International Film Festival. So we are going to be doing our first ever Toronto International Film Festival recap episode over on the main feed in 2 weeks. It's going to be kind of weird because we're going to be talking about every movie that we're watching. We're going to be talking about some of the experience that we're having while we're there, because there's some stuff happening around the festival we'll want to talk about as well, including the annual Midnight Dankness, where we have a new Matt Farley movie and a new Connor O'Malley movie coming. I'm sure Will is going to be joining us for some of these amazing TIFF experiences. But yeah, Jamie and I are approved critics, and the Sleazoids is an approved outlet. So we are going to be bringing all of our energies to that front and seeing how quickly we can get kicked out.
Yeah. Well, we made it, Mom. I'm very excited about it. I'm so stoked. I'm unbelievably stoked.
Yeah. So that's what you can look forward to in 2 weeks' time over on the main feed. But that's going to wrap it up for everything this week. Thanks so much for listening, and keep it sleazy.
Keep it sleazy, everybody.